there everybody, thanks for helping this channel reach over 1,000 subscribers. I know that doesn't seem like a big number or a milestone to take note of, but hear me out. Social media has skewed a lot of our perceptions of the weight of numbers in reality. Because in real life, if 1,000 people came up to you and said they love your work and want to follow your career, that would be pretty overwhelming, wouldn't it? It may not feel like that online, but that's the reality of the situation to me. And I find it incredibly flattering and humbling. So, to express my gratitude, I have gathered a couple dozen comments that I either haven't answered yet, or that I found interesting enough to use as a jumping off point to discuss a topic I'm interested with. Or the mythical third option, I found it funny and wanted to have some fun with it. This can apply to counter arguments against my arguments, or it can apply to really uniquely strange comments that I get a kick out of for whatever reason. Which means yes, you guys are the focus of today's video. Hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised to see your comments show up in the vid, but if yours aren't featured, don't take it personally. These are just a small selection of comments that I felt I could make decent content out of. A lot of the comments I've received are wonderful, thought-provoking, and hilarious, but I had to draw the line somewhere. Every comment I receive is very much appreciated, and I encourage everyone, including the people who disagree with me, to add to the comment section as it makes for a much more engaging and diverse place. That being said, if there's one thing I've learned by going through and collecting these comments, it's the dawning realization that an alarming number of people don't think before they speak. They just don't. And it's really important that you do that. So if I may provide some friendly advice to everyone tuning in, please fact check, spell check, grammar check, and logic check your comment before you release it into the wild. Just take the extra 30 to 90 seconds to look over what you've typed out and make sure it's as ironclad as you can possibly make it. Account for other perspectives and possibilities, follow your arguments to their logical end, and try to be as thorough as possible. Brevity may be the soul of wit, but thoroughness is the soul of truth. And I would that we all operate in truth rather than debase ourselves chasing the paltry concept of wit. Like, for the love of God, I beg you to think very hard before you open your mouth and or keyboard to the world. We already have a surplus of brainless people littering this planet. I promise you we don't need to add to that number.
Because I'm tired of people that don't think.
So yeah, we're gonna be encountering all manner of IQs and temperaments today. I hope you understand that it's all in good fun. My primary intent is not to offend, but to entertain and educate. However, if you do get offended, it's okay to feel that way. Consider it as a learning experience, because there'll be plenty learning experiences to choose from today. I'm gonna go ahead and say this for all the people that are not going to pay attention. This isn't a personal attack towards anyone. And I know we're all mature enough to understand this isn't a call to action to personally attack anyone. And just as an FYI, I don't block people unless I think you're a bot. I don't take down comments unless I think it's spam, and I believe free speech is an important right for everybody to have. Conversely, with all the freedom in the world to choose from, whatever an individual does choose to say is that much more important. So yes, please respect others' right to free speech. Don't harass or demonize the individual. Simply criticize the words they've elected to come out of their mouths. Once again, I would like to stress that you should think before you speak/comment. Be mindful and intelligent about how you speak to others. Now, without further ado, let's dive into these wonderful, amazing comments that lift my spirits each time I see.
You are retarded.
Yes! I finally got my first retarded comment. This is such a milestone. I am so proud to have made it this far. It's so wonderful. I'd like to thank the Academy, my mom for being so supportive, my friends who encouraged my retardation. It's just been so wonderful to develop my neural divergence in this way. It's an honor just to be nominated for retarded. I can't believe I actually won the award. Oh my god, I feel so blessed today. Thank you for this esteemed position. I will do my best to honor the mentally disabled with all due integrity. What a nice comment. We're off to a great start, ladies and gentlemen.
Nobody ever shows the manga when talking about Sailor Moon, when it's honestly 10 times more gorgeous than the anime in terms of visuals.
I bet. 10 times more gorgeous.
But most people probably watch the anime first, because it's popular. And also most people don't understand Japanese.
極めて何か生命に対する侮辱を感じます。
10 times more gorgeous.
My mans. Just cause the manga was paced quicker doesn't mean it had no personality or development. You can like the anime more, but you don't have to completely tear down the manga like that just because you're biased and blinded to the moments of character it contains.
Well, sir, I am beyond flattered that you find me so attractive you already consider me to be your man, but I do prefer to be asked out before committing to any relationship of that nature. So, respectfully, I'm disinclined to acquiesce to your undisguised request.
Means no.
I'm afraid I'm only attracted to people with good arguments and enough humility to refrain from telling people they don't know to do better. But don't give up. I'm sure you'll find someone who can look past all that and will value you as the less than astute catch you truly are.
Also, in the beginning of your complaints section you claim it isn't a perfect show. Then proceed to only discredit other people's nitpicks while not providing any critiques of your own. Do better.
Excuse me.
What this fellow hasn't realized is when I said the manga doesn't have time to develop anything, what I was doing was comparing the manga's development of characters, plots, and themes to the anime's development. Comparing the two, you'll see a wide gulf of difference in how deeply developed the anime is, and by extension, how flat and surface level most of what the manga develops is. It was a comparison, not an absolute statement made in isolation. Within the context of a comparison, it's as if the manga doesn't have time to develop anything, while the opposite is true of the anime. For the record, the manga does develop certain things, but as I've already said, on the whole, there's very little development of anything, and the pacing is largely to blame for that, but not solely to blame. It's also due to Naoko Takeuchi not being much of a writer. She's better as an illustrator. That is, when she actually puts in the time and effort. Now, this is my favorite part of the comment. I claimed the show isn't perfect, which it isn't, then proceeded to discredit other people's nitpicks while not providing any critiques of my own. This is clear evidence that I must do better. And thank you for that helpful and detailed command, Captain Falcon.
You've got to do better.
But if we could just rewind a little bit here, did you happen to catch the title of the video you've commented on, good sir? Why you should watch Sailor Moon, correct? So, did it occur to you that this video may have been intended as an introduction for people who know very little or nothing at all about the show? Is it possible then that the complaints section of that video features barriers of entry that are preventing these specific people from giving the show a chance, and therefore must be dealt with if they are to give the show a fair shake for themselves, which is the entire point of the video in case you weren't following? Could it then benefit me to limit an introduction to Sailor Moon to these surface level nitpicks instead of providing my in-depth critiques of the show in this particular video? Would it not be more intelligent, nay more expected, to go over my in-depth critiques in a more in-depth video? Because the purpose of this video is to bring new fans in and to dispel misconceptions that are keeping people from trying the show for themselves, as evident by the title of the video, in case I lost you again somewhere. So maybe, just maybe, it would be counterproductive to start listing specific detailed problems with the show in this video. Maybe, just maybe, they'll hear me list more substantial complaints and be scared off by the sudden negativity because they don't have the full context of what they're hearing. Maybe, just maybe, it's better to let them determine their own issues with the show and develop those issues into legitimate criticisms or personal pet peeves, giving them a natural and personalized experience with the show, mirroring the experiences people like you and I had when we first watched it. And finally, perhaps it is not a fault on my end for structuring that section of the video in that way. Perhaps it's a simple matter of brushing up on our reading comprehension skills. Shall we entertain the possibility that you created expectations that were not at all reasonable to expect from a video such as this? Because maybe, just maybe, a video entitled Why You Should Watch wasn't primarily intended for people who already watched the show. Just a thought.
The anime is better than the manga though.
Yup!
And I disagree. But everyone is entitled to their opinion and I can see why anyone would like the 90s anime more. My point is he said the 90s anime isn't perfect, but never actually brought up any flaws. Just mocked other surface level complaints.
But I did. I admitted which of the complaints I bring up are legitimate problems. I admitted that the show can be repetitive because it can be. In Super S and Stars, the two worst seasons of the show. Just because I give some explanations for the repetitiveness and clarify it doesn't pertain to the whole show, doesn't mean I denied the complaint. I admitted that Usagi starts off as a dumb crybaby and some people will find this annoying, because she does start off that way. But she develops out of that and it's kinda the whole point of the show. Graceful change and all that. I admitted that the secret identity thing is an understandable problem people would have coming into the show, but I explained why it isn't a legitimate complaint because although the show doesn't come right out and say this, the idea is that the magical transformations have a concealing attribute to them. If a magical transformation happens, there is an unspoken spell that prevents people from connecting the two identities together. It's a selective identity concealment spell. The only way to discover someone's identity in the show is to watch them transform or to piece it together with certain bits of information that could only be shared or applied to the two identities. The show is consistent with this idea for the most part. You do have Fiore figuring out the identities of the Senshi just by looking at them, but there's some leeway there because the Senshi transform in front of the Cassinian flower's minion. One could argue then that the Cassinian flower, Fiore, and the minion share a hive mind type connection, and so he saw the Senshi's transformations through the monster's eyes, thus the spell didn't affect him. This is a consistent rule in Classic, not so much for the manga and Crystal though. Basically what I'm getting at is, this adorable little creature thought this video was a comprehensive review of the entire series instead of a persuasive introduction for newcomers. The title was his clue and he somehow, against all odds, missed it. So he hurt himself in his confusion. Poor little Pokemon ran out of persimmon berries. This is why I encourage everybody to double check what you're commenting, think very hard about what you're saying and how you're saying it. Fact check, spell check, grammar check, and get your quotes and references right. It only takes a minute or two to cover your ass. And an additional friendly suggestion, try not to be an insufferable dickhead mounted on the highest horse in all the land, because telling people you don't actually know to do better when you have yet to ascend beyond a 3rd grade reading comprehension level is, well, it's quite possibly the most supercilious chicanery you could engage in. Just saying. 10 times more gorgeous.
The manga is the inverted equation of the 90s anime.
What?
The 90s anime doesn't like to go extremely deep into the conflicts of the sailors and often prefers to goof around and be more wholesome and joyful than actually tragic.
Did you watch the same show as me? Because it does in fact go deep into the conflicts of the Senshi. There are entire episodes dedicated to certain Senshi contemplating leaving the group and pursuing their dreams. Deep introspection of who they are as people, moral conundrums that they have to struggle with, etc. Doesn't like to go extremely deep into the conflicts is simply incorrect. The addition of more goofy or wholesome moments doesn't negate the tragic and serious moments. What is this argument? The anime has moments of drama that far exceed the drama in the manga because the anime has way more time to develop meaningful character arcs and plot threads that set up for the dramatic moments we get, like, I don't know, the conclusion to Nephrite's entire story in Classic compared to the manga. You'll see a pretty big jump in drama in Classic, that is if you're paying attention.
The drama is better in the critical episodes because in the anime they know how to draw and write compelling villains that you get to actually care about.
Oh, that's not so bad.
The anime has its moments of total drama for the senshi because Naoko still made the manga and they have to capture the feelings in the manga, but the manga gets overwhelming.
The manga's overwhelming drama is dependent upon the more flat, less interesting, and less distinctive characters, plot points, world building, and themes. And thus the drama can never hit as hard as the animes because we got all this stupid bullshit getting in the way. Also, overwhelming drama is melodrama. Melodrama is an aspect of poor writing. Look no further than soap operas that make no sense, but the drama is cranked up to 11 for every episode. This is a stupid argument, get a better one.
The manga occurs in sequence. There are no monster of the day moments. They fight constantly with very little time to breathe until the real end finally arrives. Not like in the anime, which has those monsters of the day to actually give sailors a time to breathe between times of tragedy.
The quickened pace of the manga is a complete detriment to the story. It does not help ramp up the tragedy and drama, especially when the characters largely get over stuff between chapters or story arcs. For example, the Infinity Arc's finale starts with the Outer Senshi trying to kill Saturn because nobody was reborn with the knowledge that she's a good guy. Brilliant move on Saturn's part, I know. But the arc ends without them coming to grips with the horrific mistake they almost made, and it doesn't comment on or reference this crucial detail at all during the next story arcs. So that's just great. It also doesn't carry forward certain important plot points, such as Venus acquiring the Sword of the Silver Crystal, an OP as fat weapon that is holy / magical and strong enough to shatter diamonds with the lightest of ease. And that's before it was at full power. You'd think that would come in handy in the later conflicts, but nah, just forget about it. It's fine. No siree, nothing to see here. No possible use it could have in this instance, not at all. It's just not needed, just forget about it. Can't imagine it would have any relevance here either. Nope.
I do not like this.
Another plot point that is flat out ignored and never brought up again are the 4 generals' stones. We see point blank that Usagi is capable of restoring people who are sealed or dormant in stones when she revives the Amazonas Quartet from balls and enables them to become Sailor Senshi. But no one ever stops and asks her to restore the 4 generals, Mamoru's version of Sailor Senshi, who live to serve him even in their jeweled form. We just never get a single reference as to why they're never restored. But Mamoru can pull them out and randomly ask for their advice once or twice. Yeah, sure, okay, thanks Naoko, great job.
The manga has the villains made mostly as manifestations of chaos. They aren't really written to be that much compelling.
The manga has some villains as manifestations of chaos, but not each individual antagonist is meant to be that, such as the mind-controlled good guys turned bad guys. How are they manifestations of chaos when they're objectively good guys under evil influence? What about Galaxia and the Sailor Animates? None of them are manifestations of chaos, clearly. How's chaos gonna double-cross itself? Beef? For real, honey. And just look at Naoko's little notes next to her pure evil characters. They're still supposed to be characters. What do you know? It's almost as if the whole manifestations of chaos thing is a bullshit excuse for bad writing and a last-minute retcon Naoko thought of around the end of the series.
But what they lack on villains, they excel in character backgrounds, management of seriousness and tragedy, deepness and psychological analysis for everyone's conflict.
Again, this is incorrect. The character backgrounds are not used in any meaningful way to develop the characters. Setsuna's crush of Endymion isn't something she has to deal with when she's reborn into the present time and standing right next to him. Hotaru losing her father twice doesn't matter to her going forward. The loss of her entire life and home, having to adjust to 3 maternal figures instead of a single father, isn't touched on either. Rei's little pendant she got from her mother doesn't mean anything for her character in the actual story. The latch on it breaks when Mercury and Jupiter die in the Stars arc, but she doesn't react in a way that proves the pendant holds sentimental significance. It stops appearing on her Sailor Fuku entirely after the 3rd arc, and it never appears on her Fuku in Crystal. Wow, look at all that deep meaning and psychological analysis. Glad we have the pendant in the manga, when Naoko actually remembers to draw it, instead of the detailed and meaningful relationship Rei has with her grandfather in Classic. Despite their personalities clashing, they share a deep and loving relationship, one that both of them benefit from immensely. His parenting method for Rei has made her into the woman she is when we meet her. Strong, confident, wise beyond her years, and with a passionate drive for life. He's protective of Rei and doesn't want her even thinking about marriage yet. She's embarrassed and frustrated with his lecherous antics, but despite her lamenting him taking in part-timers from off the street, she's glad he allowed Yuichiro to take a permanent spot at the shrine to help them out. He's happy and proud to have her as his heir and daughter. He even cheers her on at school functions. She is protective of him as her only relative and her longtime caretaker. She won't stand for anyone accusing him of actual crimes. Her rage when he gets injured during an altercation with an enemy unlocks a new powerful ability for her. He taught her everything she knows about divination and trained her in mastering her supernatural powers and physical abilities before she ever knew she was a Sailor Senshi. His love for her temporarily keeps him from hurting her when he becomes the great Yoma Jiji. Her love for him makes it impossible for her to fight him directly, and she uses another way to stop him. And when he's restored to normal, Rei cradles his body and cries in relief that she's got her grandfather back, because no matter how strongly they disagree with each other, neither hesitates to protect the other from danger. They are the only family each other have, and they cherish that bond above all else. Nah, son, we don't need that weak shit, cause we got pendant, baby! Ami, having largely absent parents, does not meaningfully come out as a conflict for her in the actual story. The Dream arc is the only arc where her parents' divorce is a thing she has to deal with or affects her in any way. It's 1 chapter / 1 scene, and it never comes up again. Yes, including Bertha fucking around with her during the chess match. That doesn't count because that's a Crystal edition. This person is defending the manga right now, so we gotta ignore that. Something as monumental as a teenager dealing with divorce, absent parents, her mother replacing her father with someone else, parental resentment, all of it is ignored. All of these juicy, dramatic, and poignant story beats are rushed through faster than a fat ass at a hot dog eating contest. They're just stated point blank, and then Amiya's like, oh yeah, but I have friends though, so that means none of this stuff matters anymore, lol. And then she transforms and breaks out of Fisheye illusion, and then Sailor Moon and Chibi Moon show up out of nowhere to actually defeat Fisheye, because allowing her to have a victory in the last 2 arcs of the series is a cardinal sin apparently, and then it stops stops being about Ami and shifts to Chibiusa having a crisis about Pegasus not needing her, blah 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 blah, on with the plot. Ami's entire home life and parental strife is forgotten by the story and is never brought up again, which is insulting not only to Ami and the audience, but it's insulting to the children who actually went through or are currently going through similar situations. Situations that the story has disrespected by trivializing their struggle, and worse, chastising them for not being able to easily get over such massive problems with the lightest of ease like Ami does, by remembering she has friends. Friends who know nothing about her home life and never find out, so they can't ever help her handle these problems. How inspiring. And you can apply that same flippant disrespect of serious subject matter to every Senshi's one scene per arc in the manga. It's all about lip service to depth, saying a thing exists, but never focusing on it long enough to actually give it weight and gravity and make it a real part of a character's journey. You know, the thing that makes it part of an ongoing story. That's how meaning and development comes about with these character backgrounds. Just mentioning them a few times and speeding right along with a plot that has nothing to do with those backgrounds is a failure on the writer's part. Mako's boy craziness isn't portrayed any differently than Minako's boy craziness. They're virtually identical, as is the other non-main characters that are boy crazy over whatever guy that happens by. Mako was rejected by her crush, and that's supposed to be a deep wound on her heart, but we never get to see the pain of that wound in the actual story. She never brings up the boy who broke her heart in an important way after her introductory chapter. She just rolls along like every other Senshi and makes hard eyes at the cute boys. Minako doesn't have the same wound that Mako has, so why are they identical in this? Because Naoko doesn't actually know what to do with this background detail of Mako's character, so she can't use it to insert meaning and development in the story. She just staples it to the character as a little trivia fact, and we rocket forward with the main plot line. After her debut chapter, Mako never makes mention of her first crush when she starts crushing on another boy. She doesn't compare others to him. She doesn't relive falling in love with him for the first time. She doesn't get nervous or self-conscious thinking about him rejecting her. She doesn't use her experience with him to give romantic advice to other characters, because it doesn't truly matter to the story. Because Mako being a full-fledged character doesn't matter to the story. She just needs to be around so the Sailor Senshi can all be present for the plot events to happen, and when we circle back to her for that one scene per arc rotation, we'll focus on an entirely different background detail of hers, instead of, you know, further developing the background details we're already aware of. And when we do get her turn in the obligatory one scene per arc rotation, she may mention him in passing, and then move along with the plot of the chapter. Blink and you miss it. No joke, she mentions her senpai all of 3 times after her debut chapter, and all 3 instances are in the same chapter of the Infinity arc. None of the references are plot relevant, nor inform her character at all, because it's not about her relationship with her senpai. It's not about the trauma that rejection did to her. It's not about any aspect of character this backstory can give her. Same with her parents' tragic and violent death in a plane crash. It doesn't matter for her character. It should, but it doesn't. It informs a trivia fact about her having a fear of flying, which, as it turns out, only applies to flying in an airplane specifically. She doesn't have a fear of heights and ends up having to fight someone high up, a standard narrative payoff to such a background detail. No, it's just a little trivia factoid about her. And I know the manga stans are clamoring on their keyboard about to educate me on Mako's one chapter in the Dream arc where she says she's all domestic and shit because her parents died in a plane crash. But that, my dear mouth breathers, is an example of poorly writing character backgrounds into the story. The reason why I can see that scene or chapter as inconsequential is because it doesn't improve the writing whatsoever. Having your character just state point blank after 2 arcs of nothing, "Hey, this is my motivation, by the way," is unbelievable. And anyone who writes that should be embarrassed of that trash. It's not just about what the story tells you, it's how the story tells you this stuff. That's what storytelling is. The writing methods and techniques that the writer uses to relay the story to the audience. If Hannibal Lecter sat Clarice down and she explained her entire motivation to him randomly in the middle of the movie, Silence of the Lambs would be a dog shit film. Instead, they have an exchange of information where Hannibal Lecter keeps all his cards close to the vest and forces Clarice to reveal extremely personal and damaging details of her life to him, unwittingly giving him more ammunition to further manipulate and torment her psychologically. That's how you use expositional character backgrounds properly. Meanwhile, the manga has Mako not mention her parents for the entire first arc, mention completely randomly and without provocation that they died in a plane crash, teehee heart emoji, then fail to mention them again in the third arc, but suddenly she just front loads her character motivation regarding them in the fourth arc, which is only relevant for a couple pages and then on with the main plot that has nothing to do with Mako's characterization or backstory whatsoever. Yeah, really stellar writing there. I'm glad Mako read us the notes on her fucking character sheet 4 arcs into the story. Fantastic work, manga. You're so good at this whole writing thing. That's all we get on Mako's parents dying in a horrific plane crash and traumatizing her while simultaneously orphaning her. No character or plot relevance, just a little blurb Naoko can put next to her concept art and have Mako read it out when it's her 1 chapter per arc, and trick neophytes into thinking even a scrap of character work has been accomplished for her. Let's be clear, bullet points next to a character sheet is not depth. Please stop. Characters mentioning in passing certain details of their lives that don't matter to the events in the present story is not depth. Please stop. There is no real depth of the psychological conflict these characters go through. You're just making stuff up. This ain't Evangelion where the psychological trauma of the characters is what drives the goddamn story. And it certainly isn't season 1 of Arcane where the psychological trauma is expertly built up, clearly shown at every possible turn, develops even further due to the events of the story, and culminates in some of the greatest payoffs in the entire story. You want to talk about depth of psychological conflicts? Let's have these be the standard and compare them to "my parents died in a plane crash, lol, that's it for this arc and the next arc, but stay tuned, all of this just might have relevance eventually, only not really." Usagi gets all depressed and sad when Mamoru is taken from her, she's sad when her friends get taken from her, she tries to go into denial about stuff in the Stars arc, but again, this is not depth. This is surface level at best, and it's ridiculously contradictive at worst. She's had all her friends die or get taken from her before now. Twice, in fact. The first was against Metalia, where everyone but Mamoru died, but even then she thought he was dead. The second was against the Black Moon clan, where everyone except Minako and Mamoru was thought to be captured and being tortured to death in the future. She didn't give up fighting evil in those scenarios, when it was more reasonable for her to do so because of her inexperience in dealing with this level of stress and trauma. She still fought the bad guys, protected the planet and or galaxy full of innocents, and did her job as a hero. But when we get to Stars and everybody dies again, she breaks down, goes into denial, and gets mega depressed. And all I can ask is,
but why though?
This is not how she handled this exact traumatic experience the 2 times we went through them before. 3.5 times for Mamoru, if we're including Endymion's first death during the Silver Millennium, and the magic lung cancer thing from Eternal being the half. He wasn't dead, but he was slowly dying before her eyes, and she couldn't stop it for whatever reason. That's never made clear, actually. I mean, she never once tries to use the silver crystal to heal him or break the curse when it's literally healed people from death before, and I'm getting off topic. So sure, Usagi is the big sad and traumatized in the Stars arc, but it's after she went through the same trauma twice and thrice before, without being nearly as traumatized, which makes it contradictive and stupid. I don't see how this qualifies qualifies as good writing. I don't. The entire first half of the Stars arc is a waste of fucking time because Usagi wouldn't just freeze and go into denial like this when she could go and get her people back or get sweet revenge on the villains. This doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't give a shit about how people simp over her psychological trauma because she shouldn't have any in the first place. No other main character, let alone side character, gets much attention at all to their mental state and how they handle their trauma. Not much. They may get a line or two in passing or a single poorly constructed scene like Ami and Mako in the Dream arc. It's not well written and it's rushed past, which is a childish way to portray psychological trauma, which is the real point of contention here. The inclusion of a trope or acknowledgement of a tragic backstory's existence is not the same as handling the topic with care, intelligence, and nuance. And that's a distinction this genius apparently has yet to understand. This ain't Revolutionary Girl Utena where everybody gets ample time in the story to develop their psychological issues, and the way in which we are shown those psychological issues play out in the story as well-written and consistent plot points. No, this is certainly not that. Having a character just state point blank how they feel at any given moment is not depth. It's the definition of tell, don't show, which is bad writing in case you weren't following.
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
The manga has no conflict in exposing seriousness, and that's a complete mirror of the anime. It's way deeper and compelling than anything else, so never underestimate it.
No.
The manga is not a mirror of the anime. It exposes seriousness in the same way a sweat-drenched obese flasher exposes their grotesque naked body to innocent people in public. It inflicts horrific damage to the psyche that can never be undone and is a tragic waste of everyone's time. You can believe these lies all you want, but don't try to sell them to me as fact. Once again, I ask whoever disagrees with me to really look at the manga itself and see how much you actually know about each character, but most importantly, how the story delivers this information to you. If it just tells you point blank what these characters think and feel, that doesn't count as depth or good writing. If you're relying on bullet points given to you from side material of the actual story itself, that ain't depth or good writing either. It has to be in the story, and it has to matter in the story, and it has to be written with a degree of finesse and intelligence. Anything less than this is not supporting the idea of depth or quality writing. Again, Utena handles this infinitely better, as well as Evangelion, Cowboy Bebop, Arcane Season 1, and Full Metal Alchemist. Please expand your horizons and get better standards for storytelling, madam. Gorgeous times more 10.
Save. And he really likes Sailor Moon. Doesn't seem to have much respect for the Deke dub though.
Nope. Hey gang. Nope.
Did you not watch the video? My introduction to this series is the Deke dub, specifically Deke's dub of the R movie, which I watched religiously with my sisters because it was cool as hell and I liked the character dynamics and the music. The Deke dub isn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it does have some great stuff in it. Most notably, the voice actors of the Deke dub really bring their A game in the serious scenes, especially Serena's voice actress, Rei's voice actress, and even their villains are given a great degree of menace and an otherworldly presence. I still revisit the Deke dub purely to enjoy their performances, my favorites of which are from the R movie, of course. So just because I don't praise it to high heaven and I highlight the problems it has, doesn't necessarily mean I don't like it or that I don't have respect for it. It is, in fact, the way that most Westerners in the 90s and early 2000s got into not just Sailor Moon, but anime itself. There's a lot of respect in my heart towards the Deke dub, and I do love it, warts and all. Hell, I can't watch the original dub of Digimon. Deke spoiled me with their take on the show. The corny jokes, the voice actors, the distinctive music, all of it is the perfect Digimon experience for me, despite it being inaccurate to the original. I don't give a shit. Deke Digimon is best Digimon.
Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions. Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions.
please don't make assumptions about me when it comes to what I think and feel on a subjective level. You don't need to assume anything about me in that realm because, hey, get this, you can always just ask me how I feel or what I think about something, whether to confirm a suspicion you already have or because you genuinely want to know. You don't have to jump to a conclusion based on thin circumstantial evidence, faulty reasoning, and the general vibes you're getting. Who wants to bet if that's gonna be a running theme? 10 times more gorgeous.
It's Queen Beryl, not Beru.
Both is good.
One is the English pronunciation, one is the Japanese pronunciation, but both are correct. I prefer the Japanese pronunciation when it comes to names, but I sometimes slip into the English pronunciation just out of habit. It happens, I'm not perfect. Feel free to go with whichever one you prefer, but I'm sticking with the Japanese pronunciation. Also,
here are 10 signs you may lack self-awareness.
10 times more gorgeous.
No, he did not just insult the transformation brooch from Crystal. That brooch was gorgeous.
And I do it again.
10 McGurgers.
Just rewatched OG Sailor Moon. Crystal can't even be compared. It's insane to believe otherwise. Have a poopy emoji opinion if you like Crystal. Doesn't bother people who just have superior taste in entertainment. I've introduced this to several people. Nostalgia is not a valid excuse.
He's right, you know.
10 times more gorgeous, darling.
Whatever. I love the manga. Shrug emoji.
Wait a damn minute.
Okay, class, let's all gather around the chalkboard and discuss what this comment is actually saying. Because I'm sure some of you right now are cringing at the thought of me giving this comment an actual response. After all, this innocent commenter is just expressing her personal opinion. She can't be wrong. But you, my friend, are not taking notice of the subtle clues that take out all pretense of innocence. This is, in fact, a counter to my argument. Therefore, it shall be treated as such. So first off, we have the word whatever, which already indicates a displeasure and disagreement.
Whatever.
Wow.
Whatever?
If this person just wanted to say they like the manga, why was whatever needed before stating that? Simple. She heard my points against the manga, didn't like them, and therefore responded with whatever as if I'm trying to convince her to stop liking it, which is never a thing I've done, but there's still some confusion with the difference between liking something and something being well made. Thus, when certain people are told the thing they like has objective problems, they feel the need to defend the thing from ridicule based on feelings, not based on objective evidence or credible counter-arguments with actual thought and reasoning behind them, just knee-jerk subjective lashing out. Ergo, whatever. To all of your points, these are my feelings which are more important than the objective assessment of quality you have presented. Not looking so innocent now, is it? But how about the fact this person felt the need to comment this in the first place? As if to challenge the idea that somewhere in the video, I claim it is wrong or bad to like the manga. So this person is bucking against that imaginary claim, or straw man version of me. The mere existence of this comment is a clear indication that she felt the need to defend her feelings from my points, meaning this is a counter/defense against my objective arguments. Then when you add on the shrug emoji, it makes it seem like it's an opinion she's sharing, not a counter/defense. It's to cover her tracks so it doesn't seem like she's engaging in an argument, while she is in fact engaging in an argument. Because there are any number of ways to express your love for something in reference to someone saying that thing is objectively bad, without engaging in a counter/defense of anything. She could have said, I'm a manga fan. I really enjoy XYZ about it. I recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it yet because I love it. She could have said, the manga is very special to me. This is my personal experience with it. She could have said, I have to disagree with this video. I didn't like what you said about the manga. I like it a lot and I enjoy how it tells the story. In each example I provide, what am I not including? Counters to an opposing argument and defenses for errors within it. Each example focuses on the subjective aspect that the commenter no doubt has for the manga without crossing into the area of argumentation. Even that last one may seem like she's trying to defend or argue against my points, but it's simply expressing that she didn't like what I said. Not that what I said was wrong or irrelevant or anything else, just that she disagrees with it, which is completely subjective and therefore perfectly fine. Nobody has to agree with what I'm saying. What I'm saying is objectively provable. I don't need anybody to agree with my points, as that's not the basis of my argumentation. 2 + 2 = 4. You can personally disagree with that all you want to. It doesn't magically make 2 + 2 not equal 4. So agree or disagree, doesn't matter. Either prove that I'm incorrect, or just express how you feel instead. Don't approach the subject as if you meant to disprove the point being made. This is all I'm trying to show you. This person is not innocently expressing the love they have for the manga. She's reacting to the negative feelings I stirred up when I pointed out objective problems with the manga. But she didn't want it to seem like she's participating in the argument, as she's just sharing an opinion. But she's inadvertently presented her feelings/opinions as a counter to my arguments, which are not just opinions. So here we are in the argument and counter-argument stage, not the innocently sharing thoughts and feelings stage. For all the people still not catching on or disbelieving my read on this person, I am perfectly fine with people expressing their love for the manga and even for Crystal. I'm fine with people expressing hatred for Classic, or hatred for my videos, or even hatred for me personally. All of it is fine because all of it is subjective. I don't know why people need me to say this so many times, but there you go. I don't give a shit what you personally like or don't like. Feelings are subjective. At the same time, however, when you try to submit those subjective feelings as counter-arguments or defenses for something I'm approaching objectively, I will correct you and send you back over to the subjective side of things. This person wandered a little into the objective argumentation side of things, so this is me scooching them back over to the subjective conversation. I'm doing it in a way that some would consider a bit harsh, but only because I want everybody to have the self-awareness to recognize when you do this. You're trying to force two different conversations into each other because you feel some type of way, and we don't do that here. Again, I strongly encourage you to take a moment and think before you say something out of hurt feelings, regardless of how hurt those feelings may be. Just be more mindful when engaging with people you disagree with. That's all I request, and I do so humbly. Hang 10 times more gorgeous, dude!
In my opinion, about Ikuko's reaction to Usagi's grade, I think Naoko Takeuchi, the mangaka, made the changes in order to adopt today's parenting style. In the 90s, it's forgivable and understandable for parents to get very mad, screaming, yelling, slapping their children if they made mistake, or have a bad grades. But nowadays, parents were softer to treat their misbehaved children, even for Asian.
Is it really needed, though? It's a fiction. It's an adaptation to focus on being mature and faithful to the manga. Hell, it's a time capsule from the pre-millennium of the 2000s. The toned-down Crystal Ikuko's reaction does this adaptation a disservice, that's all.
I agree with Keytard. Couldn't have put it better myself. Nice job, buddy. 10 times more gorgeous, man.
New watcher here. Looking forward to these videos. This is gonna be a bit off topic, but I need to get it off my mind. I know that a lot of the fans have, through the years, made headcanons that the close people in Usagi's life also once lived on the moon. Some fans made headcanons that Ikuko was like a nurse or something for Princess Serenity, and also that Naru was someone close to her on the moon, and another popular headcanon is that she would be Sailor Earth. But what I just thought about during the other video, was that I don't think I've seen anyone talking about Haru Na in the Moon Kingdom.
This is very interesting, and I haven't yet had the opportunity to touch on it, so I'll use this comment to do so. I don't actually like the idea that the miscellaneous Moon Kingdom people, who I call Mooninites, were reincarnated as key figures in Usagi's life. I think it's better if the reincarnation works as thus. OG Queen Serenity took the souls of each individual who died during the Silver Millennium and placed them in the wombs of a bunch of expecting mothers around the Earth in the future. Each of them is born as humans with no memory of their past lives as Mooninites, so that OG Queen Serenity's wish for them could come true. She didn't want anyone to be burdened with the tragedy of the Silver Millennium's fall, nor feel obligated to seek out anyone from the past and have to juggle their new life with a whole other past life. She just wanted them to be free and to live in a peaceful time. Inserting them purposefully in Usagi's life would take away from that idea of total freedom and a completely clean slate. Also, let's not forget the state that OG Queen Serenity was in when she performed the reincarnation. Homegirl was stricken with grief, standing practically alone in the ruins of her kingdom, and she was desperate to undo the tragedy she just witnessed. I don't think she was in a state of mind where she could use the silver crystal to make specific, detailed decisions for each individual she was reincarnating. You have to remember, she reincarnated everybody except for the Dark Kingdom's leadership and Yoma. So that's 2 armies, an entire kingdom's worth of servants, citizens, nobles, and the like. That's a lot of people to, on the fly, think up specific futures for, then to reincarnate them into those futures. It makes far more sense that in the period of time it takes for her to actually go about reincarnating everyone and sending them to Earth, that her intent and wish for each of them is as she herself states outright. I don't think OG Queen Serenity wanted to micromanage anyone's reincarnation. I think she just wanted everyone to have a clean slate and forget about the tragic past life they had and go on living in peace. Setting Luna and Artemis aside, as well as hiding the silver crystal in the way she does, was just a precaution against the Dark Kingdom and Metalia breaking the seal somehow and the Earth needing to be defended. Plus, I think it's far more valuable and accurate to the concept of reincarnation that your new life is a clean slate that each individual must build up naturally for themselves, as opposed to divine intervention coming in and mucking about with your new start. So I understand the appeal of this headcanon, I really do, but I myself do not ascribe to it. Anybody else is welcome to entertain this headcanon all they like, of course. I'm not the gatekeeper of proper headcanons and whatnot, but as for me, I do not think that Ikuko, Haruna, Naru, Umino, nor anyone else were Moonanites in a past life. I think they're regular old human beings that Usagi just happens to share her new life with. Great question though. Thanks for asking. 10 times more gorgeous, sincerely.
Nah, not the blonde carrot. Skull emoji.
I mean, did I lie though? 10 times more gorgeous, nah.
Tu n'aimes pas le Sailor Moon Crystal, ça veut dire tu détestes ça.
Bonjour, mademoiselle.
You don't like Sailor Moon Crystal, that means you hate it.
Oui, oui, baguette.
But of course, I detest Crystal. Very astute of you to pick up that subtle detail, mon ami.
Elle n'est pas horrible, elle est tellement l'amour, cœur grandissant emoji, cœur étincelant emoji, 2 cœurs emoji.
She's not horrible, she's so love growing heart emoji, sparkling heart emoji, 2 hearts emoji.
No.
You know it's 10 times more gorgeous. You know it's 10 times more gorgeous.
I stopped watching the anime because I was tired of the same plot where a new enemy is introduced every episode, and the main characters save the day. I dropped the show on episode 7. I might give it another shot someday.
So, I've seen this comment a few times, and I'd like to address it formally. If you watched the first 7 episodes and determined that it is the same plot every episode, then you have not been paying attention. Straight up, you just haven't. Describing the show as new enemy is introduced and the heroes beat them is already revealing on this person's part, because does that not describe the vast majority of stories? One could say this about Sherlock Holmes. A new case is introduced every book and the hero finds the culprit. One could say this about the entire superhero genre. A new villain is introduced every few issues and the hero beats them. So I'm already past the Sailor Moon specifics of this thought process, and I'm now thinking, what do you consider to be good media that can also be described exactly like this, so that we can deal with the root of the problem you may be having here? Because it very well may be that this person is a very rare individual who can't do episodic type stories at all. So if that's the case, yeah, don't bother. But if it's something else specifically about Sailor Moon, maybe we can tackle that problem. For now, I'll just counter the claims made because the statement, it's the same plot over and over, rubs me the wrong way. It's really not the same plot. Episode 4 doesn't introduce a new villain. It's Jadeite doing the evil plot, and he succeeds in stealing the energy and bringing it back to base. That's not the plot that he's applied to this batch of episodes. Episode 3 is a clear departure in this repetitive idea. It's a detective story that slowly unfolds until Usagi and Luna get to the bottom of it and face Flau, then Jadeite, who who they can't beat. The concept that they always beat the villain is clearly not supported here. They stopped the evil plot from continuing, but they didn't beat the villain either. All the energy Jadeite stole is still in his possession when he leaves, so all the people that were dead from the flower brooches are still dead by the end of the episode. And believe you me, people did in fact die from the flower brooches. More info on that in episode 3's analysis video, coming eventually. Plus, Jadeite is now aware of Sailor Moon's existence, as well as a mysterious rose-throwing third party that is helping her out. Jadeite has used this moment as a way to restructure his schemes and how he will get energy the next episode, which is reflected in him being the only one behind Jim Shapley. Episode 6 has Usagi teaming up with a civilian who is being targeted because he has the MacGuffin that the Yoma needs. Like, come on, how is that the same as episode 1 or 2 or 5? I'm not comfortable letting that statement slide with no pushback because it's just flatly incorrect. Episodes 1 through 7 are not the same plot over and over again until Ami shows up. That ain't accurate and I don't like it. Now, clearly, he's a newcomer who's just casually watching the show for the first time, so I get the misunderstanding, but it's still wrong. Pay attention, sir. It's not the same plot over and over. You're missing out on quality content because you're so focused on the Monster of the Week formula, but that isn't inherently bad storytelling. It's a method of storytelling, just like musicals are a method of storytelling. And just because someone might find musicals unappealing doesn't mean all musicals are inherently bad stories or all musicals are the exact same. That's nonsense. The mere existence of a trope/cliche is not a measurement of objective quality. Execution of said trope/cliche is what determines objective quality, because execution is everything. Find all the differences between episodes and the details being added onto the continuing plot, and you'll see what I mean. Don't stop your critical thinking at recognizing a common storytelling device and associating it with other stories that use said device, and extrapolating that out to mean it's the same thing over and over because same general trope. Let's all be just a little smarter than that, shall we? I would say, as well, if you even remotely enjoyed episode 3, then you should be locked in for the remainder of the solo Usagi episodes, because episode 3 is so good just as a standalone episode. You get a nice gradual ramping up of tension, a mystery that's handled surprisingly well, and that in battle with Flau and Jadeite is just awesome. If you like that episode at all, solo Usagi episodes should be an enjoyable watch, if not a fantastic collection of episodes to carry you into 8. At least that's what it was for me. I understand episodes 4 and 7 are quite bad in comparison to 3 and 6, which is a hilarious coincidence that 2 of the best solo Usagi episodes are immediately followed by 2 of the worst episodes, but I don't know. Episodes 1 through 3 are so darn good, I was locked in. Hopefully, when I get around to analyzing those episodes, I can thoroughly explain why they're really good. 10 times more gorgeous.
Japanese Winx Club.
Sailor Moon came first?
Someone didn't get the joke.
Where's the punchline, my mans?
Ten times more gorgeous.
Saj, I love you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
And I really appreciate what you said about the hand-drawn transformations being a staple of Sailor Moon. They looked so much better, and someone drew all those damn ribbons, over and 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 over, instead of using a computer and being lazy only for it to look so much uglier. Shameful.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
The crystal rendition upsets my stomach.
You gotta respect the craft for the craft to respect you. Animation is all about putting in the extra effort to make something look amazing. It will always be appreciated and elevate the product. Always. So when people cut corners because they're either lazy or talentless, it shows. I hope your tum-tum feels better soon, buddy. I recommend black tea and buttered toast for an upset stomach. Does wonders for me. Oh yeah, 10 times more gorgeous, yeah.
Wrong so many times in under 5 minutes.
See, here's how you know this person didn't think before they commented. Because one cursory look at the timestamps of the video would inform everybody that the intro is 6 minutes, where I simply explain my intent with the video and the series it will be a part of, my position in the fandom, and classic, which is mostly my opinions and some other miscellaneous introductory things. Therefore, I flat out cannot be wrong so many times in under 5 minutes, because I'm talking about things I am incapable of being wrong about for 6 minutes, which means old girl didn't think before she wrote that. You see why it's important to do that now?
The manga came out monthly and had a captivated audience. That's how the anime happened. People liked Sailor V and Sailor Moon.
The manga's release schedule and reception doesn't negate anything I've said in the intro. In fact, I believe I do say something like this in my intro. I know how the anime came to be, and I know that people like the 2 manga that preceded the anime. I've never said otherwise, but okay.
And the lack of characterization on panel, despite her notes and their actions exhibiting personalities Takeuchi wrote out, is likely a result of being rushed to make a manga, and mistreated by the anime makers.
Naoko being rushed to make her manga is no excuse for a shit product. All mangaka are rushed to make their manga. Literally all of them. Take a look at her husband's entire editorial history, why don't you? And there is no record of her being mistreated by the anime team. You just made that up. The anime team did nothing to her. Her manga editor is the one that pushed her to finish the manga, which is again what they do equally to everybody. Akira Toriyama, Masashi Kishimoto, Tite Kubo, Ichiro Oda, all of them were rushed by their editors to meet their deadlines and finish their manga. All of them handled this with varying degrees of success, but the end result of their products are what they are. Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, and even One Piece have their flaws, but they were all under the same pressure, and they didn't use said pressure as an excuse for any of the faults in their work. They blamed themselves, because ultimately this is the business they have chosen. They are ultimately responsible for their stories being what they are. So do not come at me with this nonsensical narrative that Naoko Takeuchi was some innocent victim that was kidnapped and forced to make Sailor Moon by a bunch of mean old men. And so the flaws present in the manga are all their fault, not hers. That's supremely ignorant, and you need to stop talking about this subject until you do the proper research. The anime team are the ones who made entire story arcs to give Naoko the time she needed to develop her manga. How can you turn around and say they rushed or mistreated her when they literally made accommodations for her more than once? The hell are you talking about? Oh, and isn't it convenient that all the bad stuff in the manga is the result of evil men rushing her, but all the good stuff is the result of Naoko flourishing while under the same time constraints that made the bad stuff in the manga. So the mean old men rushing her made the manga bad, but only sometimes because the manga is mostly good? Meaning Naoko being rushed or not literally makes no difference because she's capable of making something good while being rushed? Also, you just agreed with me that the manga does lack characterization, so thank you for conceding that point. Being rushed to create something may be the explanation for why it is bad, and it isn't in this case, but it does not excuse its badness. It doesn't magically make the flaws go away. The flaws are still present and they're still just as bad as they were without the explanation. I am not looking for meta explanations as to why something is bad. I'm simply detailing how bad that something is. That's it. I've never been interested in piss-poor explanations intended as piss-poor excuses. Thank you.
I love the classic anime.
Guess what? I don't believe you.
But every character is made less complex in order to serve comedic gags.
Every character is made less complex because gags? Okay, that's not how comedic writing works, Pumpkin. Just because there are more gags present in the story doesn't make it inherently less complex than a story that doesn't have gags. I don't know why I need to explain this to someone old enough to write all this out, but here we are. Life itself has comedic moments in it. Does that mean the more lighthearted and comedic moments you have in life, the less complex you are as an individual? Or the less complex your life is compared to a more depressed person's life? What are we doing? Think about Star Wars for a second, the OT of Star Wars, compared to Rebel Moon. Star Wars has far more gags in it than Rebel Moon, but Star Wars is far more complex than Rebel Moon, and you're not gonna find anybody arguing against that point. Star Wars is wonderfully written and is rich with meaning and depth, whereas Rebel Moon is abysmally written and is fundamentally barren of meaning, as it has no depth whatsoever, as all of Zack Snyder's scripts tend to be.
Why did you say that?
Again, I want to highlight something very important here. This person just admitted that the manga lacks characterization in the actual story, despite Naoko's intent to put in more character, meaning Naoko failed in the writing of the actual story. She could have done better and just didn't. This is meant to be a defense of Naoko, just as an FYI. Then she said that the anime has less complex characterization than the manga because gags. As if there are no gags in the manga, that actively takes away meaning and complexity. Put simply, the manga lacks characterization because Naoko didn't put it in there, making her a shit writer, but the anime has less characterization than the manga because there are gags present in it, which is to say gags make things less complex and characters lose their characterization somehow. But this also applies to the manga, possibly more so, which means both have poor characters then? And you're a fan of this franchise, why exactly? This is what we call a contradictive argument, or a self-own, as the kids today are calling it. This person did not know what they were doing when they made these two statements. They simply felt their precious manga being attacked and lashed out in all directions, dragging both the anime and the manga down with their arguments to make the manga's faults seem less extreme somehow, which makes their position less than tenable, to put it lightly. But hey, they could probably come back from this. Let's let them cook.
Usagi wasn't allowed to mature.
Usagi wasn't allowed to mature. So we're just lying now, huh? We're just blatantly telling lies. Easily disprovable lies. Got it. No one who has watched the show and claims to love the show would say this shit, because it's not even a good lie. This is such a bad lie, people who actively despise the show wouldn't even agree with this shit, because it's so very clearly the most nonsensical of fabrications one could devise. I'm stunned at how brazenly she's making these claims without a single shred of evidence to back them up. Like, where the hell did this misplaced confidence come from, and how the hell did you get a hold of it? Cause it certainly couldn't be through cunning or any degree of forethought on your part.
Mamoru was turned from being an example of a healthy ideal boyfriend, to basically being designed to groom the audience to accept mistreatment from men.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Mamoru was designed to groom the audience into accepting mistreatment from men. Interesting. This the same Mamoru who repeatedly sacrifices himself and his comfort for Usagi's benefit? This the same Mamoru who gives her advice and helps her even when he doesn't need to because he isn't trying to date her at the time? This the same Mamoru who sacrifices his happiness so that Usagi can live? This the same Mamoru that helps Usagi's friends out with no expectation of getting something from them by doing so? This the same Mamoru who doesn't get remotely upset at Usagi for getting mad at him and slapping him for not knowing her birthday when she never even told him her birthday? This the same Mamoru who took that in stride, turned around and bought her a thoughtful birthday gift, and ran to give it to her so she knows he loves her, not even thinking of forcing her to apologize for what she did to him, or giving her a lecture, or making her feel bad at all for what she did to him. This the same Mamoru who always comes to her rescue no matter what, despite his power level being greatly beneath hers, but he don't give a shit about that. He still steps up to fight with his blonde baby. This is the Mamoru who is meant to groom the audience to accept mistreatment from men. This is that guy. Yeah, I don't actually think we watched the same show. That's the level of disconnect I'm seeing here. I do not know how anyone can watch the show, let alone claim to love it, and come away with this completely false read on one of its central characters. Like, seriously, what the actual f*** is this rancid bullshit? Back up off of Mamoru, alright? He is the GOAT. Do you understand? The motherfucking GOAT. And you are just begging to get headbutted with these filthy, baseless lies. As far as Manga Mamoru being an example of a healthy, ideal boyfriend, well... I question your definition of the words healthy and ideal, cause this ain't it, chief. This, however, is what I would call a healthy and ideal boyfriend. Absolutely. Maybe consult a therapist about the differences between these two and what backwards dictionary you use to define a healthy and ideal romantic partner. I think the results will surprise you. And hang on, are you attributing his behavior before he's actually Usagi's boyfriend as boyfriend behavior? They aren't going out at all in season 1. They never get the chance to. So then what the f*** is this? Why are you using season 1 to judge him as a boyfriend when he isn't even Usagi's boyfriend until the second arc of season 2? How does that make any sense? And even then, if you're using the breakup arc to judge him, there are extenuating circumstances that are forcing him to act out of character intentionally. So that also doesn't count because he's very clearly and openly not behaving like he truly would be had complicated circumstances not forced him on the matter. Y'all see how disingenuous that is? Like, it's not just me, right? This is some blatantly disingenuous shit. I'm not for that foolishness. Classic Mamoru is the GOAT. Manga Mamoru is the bloat. Please try again.
Makoto was turned into a full tomboy, despite her whole character being about not judging a girl's personality by how big she is.
Mako was turned into a full tomboy? So again, did you just watch a completely different show? Or, like, what are you talking about? Mako isn't just a tomboy, and I highlight that in this very video. I straight up show her openly stating she is really into girly stuff deep down. How you gonna lie like that to my face when I got the receipts right here in the video? Girl, bye.
Oh yeah. And the barely disguised fetish she shoved into a story about girls aged 14 to 16.
The barely disguised fetishes of... Okay, stop. Stop. If we're gonna talk about sexual gratification in Sailor Moon, you are not ready for that conversation. Because, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Naoko inserted several of her fetishes into the manga, and the anime got rid of most of that shit. Oh, what's this? You thought Naoko Takeuchi was this pure and chaste lady who would never give in to the temptations of the lascivious flesh? Well then, how do you explain this? Yeah. That's a Naoko Takeuchi original watercolor of a 16-year-old Usagi's ass cheeks flapping in the wind. And this is some toxic man coming along and censoring it while redrawing it in the anime style. Gee, it's almost as if he didn't want to render the butt crack of a 16-year-old girl, but Naoko did. This is Naoko putting 14 to 16-year-old girls and even a 9 to 12-year-old girl, biologically speaking that's what she is, so shut up, in very revealing and sometimes suggestive dress. And this is the disgusting, perverted, lubricious anime men cleaning it up to make it 100% PG. Not even PG-13, just straight up PG, compared to innocent, precious little angel Naoko putting a tattoo on Rei's cleavage to literally draw attention to her adolescent breasts. And she went ahead and pulled down the bust line of every single character to emphasize their adolescent chesticles. Interesting that the female artist is more willing to get sexually explicit with her art than the many male artists behind the sexist, misogynistic, sexually gratuitous 90s anime. Oh, and here's some very important notes Naoko put next to her character designs, where she specifically emphasizes the sexiness and voluptuous features of the characters she came up with all by herself. She decided to broadcast in her notes this specific information in this specific way. Very interesting indeed. How about Naoko's non-consensual kiss fetish? Oh yes, you opened the door, now you gotta walk through it. She introduced us to this legitimately criminal fetish in chapter 1 of her manga, When Usagi Kisses Luna. Yes, I'm aware that this is supposed to be funny, cute, awkward, or whatever, and isn't intended to be sexual. I am not, in fact, as dense as this commenter appears to be. But if we're talking about creators inserting their fetishes into a show with 14 to 16-year-old girls, then we can't ignore the original creators' fetishes, now can we? And this is clearly a non-consensual kiss, which we will see a lot more of in this wonderful little manga that a pure and innocent little lady made. So buckle up, cause it quite literally only gets worse from here. The Masquerade Ball features the first kiss between Tuxedo Kamen and Usagi. We all know how that ends up happening. He takes advantage of her when she's drunk and passed out and bestows upon her a kiss. And this is clearly a non-consensual kiss, which can be interpreted as unsolicited sexual contact, which is the definition of sexual harassment or sexual assault. This is the most infamous example, and it's carried into the anime as well. So once again, the classic anime is not perfect. Stop acting like I don't believe that. But regardless, here's all the other instances of sexual assault that didn't make it into the classic anime. Tuxedo Kamen picks up a comatose Sailor Moon off the side of the road and plants one on her right then and there. So that's twice he sexually assaulted her after she fell unconscious. But then she winds up doing it to him in the following chapter, where she forces herself on him. Again, he didn't consent to this kiss. There was no reasonable expectation of sexual contact, evident by his completely shocked reaction after she pulls away. Which means this is the first time Usagi sexually assaulted Mamoru. Equal rights indeed. Then we skip to the finale of the Dark Kingdom arc, where wouldn't you know it, Usagi passes out for the umpteenth time. Seeing that his love interest was comatose, Mamoru just couldn't help himself and went ahead and put his mouth on her mouth, making this the third time he sexually assaulted Usagi. I'm starting to see a pattern here. And before you start trying to excuse this one, I realized she had just used up all her energy and he was trying to bring her back to life, essentially. But nowhere does it say he needed to kiss her to give her some energy. You know, kind of like what Classic establishes in its greatest story, the R movie. But maybe Crystal Mamoru had other options, neither we nor he knows, but he immediately jumped to macking on an unconscious minor again. So don't tell me this is fine because she's dying or whatever. The problem is, this is the third time he's done this. He didn't even consider other options that didn't involve tongue punching her gaping maw. His instant and immediate reaction was to mac on her when she was unconscious again. This is the fourth non-consensual kiss between these two, and we've only hit the end of the first arc. Naoko's fetish is clearly on display, because otherwise, why did she include it so much in such a short amount of time? Then, when we get to the beginning of the next arc, Chibiusa is guilty of a non-consensual kiss. Yes, Naoko forced a literal child in on her fetish after she forced a literal cat in as an opener. Fan-f***ing-tastic. Chibiusa kisses Mamoru on the lips when she appears from the future, which is the second time this is framed as a joke, when it's a father and daughter doing it. We're really getting into criminal offense levels with this fetish now, aren't we? Again, the anime has this moment as well, but the origin of this is the manga, which means the fetish on display here belongs to Naoko, not the anime team, which is the point this person is trying to make and has already failed miserably at it. Let's keep exploring how miserable this failure truly is, shall we? We then get to the future where Prince Demando proceeds to treat Usagi the same way Mamoru did when he barely knew her, and we get some more non-consensual kissing. So we're up to 7 instances of this, all under the lustful eye of Naoko. But at least she had the wherewithal to condemn this one in the story itself, only because it's a villain doing it. But when our protagonists do the exact same thing, it's a-okay and all romantical. Then we get Chibiusa transformed into Black Lady, forcing another kiss on her father, which is just... no. The anime brilliantly changed this into a simple hallucination cooked up by the evil wise man in an attempt to break Usagi. It never actually happens in reality, it's just a hallucination from a sick, evil bastard. But here, in Naoko's rendition, full-on brainwashed incest. Hooray! Also, we end the arc with Chibiusa doing it yet again. So that's 9 non-consensual kisses just in the first 2 arcs. What a record for good old Naoko. How about we add just 1 more? Make it a nice round number. This one's a doozy. Moving on to the Infinity arc, we get acquainted with the unfaithful, cross-dressing, hedonistic, sexual, predatory freak touted as a hero, otherwise known as Tenno Haruka. When she's Sailor Uranus, Usagi's chasing her. Haruka directly threatens her, then performs a non-consensual kiss on the younger girl to shock her into letting her run away. This is the 10th non-consensual kiss in the manga, and we haven't even gotten to the last 2 arcs yet, where there's at least 1 more by the always slimy, self-centered, genuine weirdo Seiya-kun. So I feel like that's a pretty good amount of evidence to say that this is a barely disguised fetish of Takeuchi-san. Otherwise, why is there so much of it in this f***ing thing? Nobody else was asking for any of this. She just put it in there because she wanted it in there. Because she likes this shit. Naoko Takeuchi is the pervious person connected to Sailor Moon. She put a sex scene in her manga between 2 underage characters, with Chibiusa sleeping in the next room over. Nobody told her to do that. She did it because she wanted to insert a sex scene in her story, because she gets off on it. There's no other reason she included that moment in the story. The anime didn't have any sex scenes in it. How is that possible if the men are so perverted and sexually exploitive? What's happening here? Naoko wasn't mistreated by anyone when making her manga. Being rushed to make deadlines does not constitute as mistreatment, especially when she admits herself that the other mangaka were meeting their deadlines while she was lagging behind due to her unprofessionalism and procrastination. Furthermore, it's not an excuse that suddenly makes her story's problems no longer her fault. Once again, every other mangaka in the industry, including mangaka working with the same editors and publishers as Naoko, were not mistreated. This includes other female mangaka, the likes of the incredibly famous and renowned Clamp, as well as the less famous but successful nonetheless, Megumi Tachikawa. When interviewed about the manga making process, the relationship between them and the magazine publishers, as well as their editors specifically, none of them said a single word about any degree of mistreatment. And these interviews are after they had separated from Nakayoshi and the Kodansha publishing company that they all worked under at the same time as Naoko Takeuchi. They all have nothing but positive things to say about their editors, who would have been the most constant and frequent influence on their work at the time. Naoko herself has gone on record and spoken quite fondly of her editor Fumio Osabu, going so so far as to call him her partner and #1 fan and supporter of Sailor Moon. They both consider each other friends to this day and have nothing but good things to say about each other, even if they are critical of the manga itself. Naoko had criticisms for the anime without question, but she didn't have anything negative to say about them as people or colleagues. Whenever she had opportunity to talk about the anime staff, she again had nothing but respect for them. And this respect was reflected back to her by them, despite once again them having criticisms of her work and even her creative process. In all the years after Sailor Moon's manga was completed and Naoko unofficially retired from the manga and anime industry, she has never, not once, expressed any mistreatment of any kind from the anime team nor the manga publishers she worked with. There isn't a single record of that, nor is there a single record of the people that worked with her being in any way unkind, unfair, or disrespectful towards her in any way, shape, or form. So let's be perfectly clear on this, cause I'm sick of y'all lying about these people you know next to nothing about and are judging purely because they're males adapting a female writer's story unfaithfully. It is blatantly f***ing obvious that none of you know what you're talking about when it comes to this topic. So kindly shut up. Be offended all you want, but you cannot honestly believe this shit unless you legitimately do not know this woman, nor the people that worked alongside her, nor how Sailor Moon's manga was actually created, nor the manga industry itself. So please stop speaking on things you plainly know nothing about. You're not doing your precious manga any favors, and you're self-snitching in ways you can't possibly fathom. So just close your mouth and stop worrying about this behind the scenes stuff. If you had any self-awareness whatsoever on this subject, you'd be wholly embarrassed and issue the goddamn anime team a formal apology in fluent Japanese, cause you vilified a group of people who did absolutely nothing wrong simply because their genitals don't match Naoko's, and they deviated from the source material, which was a necessary evil in the first place. So they didn't have a fucking choice but to change some stuff around. And the changes they made are what made this IP you're shamelessly performing eternal fellatio on what it is. Sailor Moon wouldn't have lasted past the first arc if it wasn't for the classic anime picking up Naoko's copious amount of slack. And again, that's Naoko's editor saying that, not me. You wouldn't have gotten Chibiusa, the Outer Senshi, the Starlights, Nihilania, the Sailor Animates, Galaxia, Chibiusa, nor Sailor Cosmos had it not been for the classic anime taking the world by f***ing storm. Now kindly get to typing that apology to the anime team who made this IP the golden god you so rigorously writhe your unkempt body against. Because if it were up to Naoko, everything would have ended with the Dark Kingdom arc, and Ami would be a cyborg for some f***ing reason. Get in touch with some goddamn class and beg every single man involved in this IP for their forgiveness, and maybe you'll have earned your way back from this ghastly display of yours.
The best version of the Dark Kingdom story is probably the live-action adaptation that Takeuchi was able to influence without the sexism
Bitch, the door.
and overkill comedy the men making the old anime inserted.
That's your opinion and you're welcome to it, but you don't get to claim that the 90s anime was sexist, cause it wasn't. Any instance of misogyny is attributed to the villains, and they are portrayed as 100% evil and deserving of defeat. Then they are defeated. I have no idea how anyone can think Sailor Moon, any version of it, supports sexism. It just flatly doesn't. I can confidently say in all versions of the story, men and women are given equal respect, development, and attention, and gender is not a characteristic that factors too much one way or the other in the actual writing. They are simply characters who just so happen to be either male or female. Or in the manga and Crystal's case, they are plot devices who just so happen to be either male or female. Please stop trying to make the 90s anime sexist because men made it. That in and of itself is sexist, because it says that you believe men are just inherently sexist, so anything they make will have sexism in it, which is judging an entire group of people negatively based solely upon their gender, which is the literal definition of sexism. Thank you for once again shooting yourself in the foot, hun. You're making this far too easy for me. Just to clarify, I don't know if these really are the beliefs this woman holds. I don't know this woman. I'm just reading her comment, evaluating her arguments, and following her logic. I don't know if she's just really bad at defending the manga. I don't know if this is coming out of her simply because she's triggered or whatever. I don't know her mentality at all. All I can do is take her arguments or fallacies or statements and assess them as they are. The statements, arguments, or fallacies being presented to me are what I'm describing. And these things are fundamentally sexist, ignorant, stupid, incompetent, desperate, bitter, etc. I do not know the person making these statements. I would never arrogantly deign to know someone based upon a couple of paragraphs they wrote, which amount to a snippet in the life of a full-fledged human being. I can only describe arguments and lines of logic, and that's all I'm interested in doing. If I see a lie, I call it a lie. I don't know if this person is a liar, I just know they've said false things on this subject. I don't know if this person is intelligent or an ignoramus, I just know they're talking about things they appear to know next to nothing about. If I see sexism, I call it out as sexism. I don't know if this person is sexist really, I just know they've expressed sexist arguments and beliefs that are completely inaccurate to reality, which is pretty bad as a decision, regardless of what her intent or beliefs are. She claimed that the men who made the anime are perverted and reduced all the female characters into shallow stereotypes with zero proof. Her logic started and stopped with Sailor Moon is female-centric, men made the anime, woman made the manga, therefore anime bad, manga good, cause men don't know how to do female stories or characters. And that's really bad. I had to go after that as hard as I did because it really is that f***ing bad inherently. Like, that's astonishingly harmful and reductive of storytelling, and 50% of the goddamn human population. I had to hammer that in. So to help anyone who may be thinking Saj is going a little hard on this poor child, don't worry, I leave all character judgments and true motives and intent to you the viewers. If you're coming away from this thinking this commenter as a person is anything, negative or positive, that's all you. Now, let's continue. Define overkill comedy. I don't know what that means, because it could mean I personally didn't like all the comedy in Classic, which seems like a distinct possibility because of the earlier disparaging of jokes and gags in this comment. It could mean I have actual arguments that can prove or at least present reasonable doubt for specific jokes being detrimental to the story, which I doubt is the case because I haven't seen any support for the claims and arguments made in this comment, nor were any real specifics provided, just a lot of sweeping statements with no evidence to back them up. You'll love to see it. So until I get clarity on this point, I'm just gonna disagree. The comedy in Classic is top notch. I go over episode 1's comedy in detail, so wrong. Next point.
Crystal needs a remake already.
Nah, how about we just let Sailor Moon chill for a while? Give plenty of time for people's critical thinking to kick in and realize Crystal was actually pretty shit, cause the manga's actually pretty shit.
Yeah, I said it.
Let's get some more of that 90s anime or PGSM quality stuff. That's what I'd like to see. But alas, we don't live in a perfect world, evident by your presence alone, my dear.
I didn't ask for part 2.
Off-putting widow.
Yes, bitch.
She's loving and naive enough to not realize that a strange animal shouldn't be that close to your face.
Oh dear God, she's trying to defend the Lunakiss. Jesus Christ. This is not a drill, this is real. Someone has actually stooped that low to defend the precious sacred cow of the manga. Strap in. Let's just apply the barest minimum of logic to this, shall we? Picture yourself walking down the street, minding your own business, when suddenly you see across the street someone stepping on a stray cat. Before you can even do anything about that, they lift the stray cat up, and you can in fact tell it is a stray cat, like from the street, and the person has loudly expressed that they do not know the cat, so it's clear that this is a random stray cat. Then that person proceeds to lift the cat to their face and kiss it right on its mouth. Now, You being a normal ass person would immediately think what about that individual? Because if we're keeping it 100, I would be like, what the is wrong with that person, and what number do I call to get them institutionalized? That is incredibly weird. That is incredibly off-putting. That is incredibly gross. And that is incredibly uncomfortable to watch. Period. The descriptor of loving and naive does not come to mind when a normal person sees that. You do not want to disagree on this point. You do not know how bad that'll make you look. Abandon ship, abort mission, stop the presses, turn the around, and snap back to reality. There is quite simply no way that this story decision is in any way objectively better than Classic's story decision. As I said in the video, Classic is showing us Usagi's personality and laying the foundation that we need to later see her as a superhero. It is justifying Luna's decision to follow Usagi and eventually choose her to become Sailor Moon. It makes so much sense, is perfectly entertaining, and the way in which we learn the relevant information is incredibly well executed. The manga just shows us a weird, stupid little girl fumbling her way through life, putting her lips on a street animal she has never seen before, and getting her face clawed as a reward for being so bizarre and gross. Naoko doesn't understand the concept of consent, and this is the first sign of that. You do not kiss someone on the mouth that you don't even know. Literal children know this. We are well beyond naivete in this scene, and we've barreled all the way into what the f is wrong with you, you deranged omelet territory. Do not defend this. It is the definition of a fool's errand.
That's like when they had to have Mako fight guys instead of saving Usagi from being hit by a car.
Oh, come on. What is this? I mean, where?
Gotta have the extra confrontations and appeal as much to bros as possible. Lol.
What the hell are you talking about? Mako fighting bad guys instead of saving Usagi from a car is bad because it appeals to boys. We're doing this again, huh? Okay then. Let me get this straight. You would prefer, madam, that Usagi just randomly attracts danger when Mako's around so that she can conveniently save her from said danger. This includes Usagi almost getting herself run over simply because she didn't watch where she was going, which makes her stupid to the point of the viewer questioning how she's lived this long because she walks to school alone every day. How is it that she's never gotten hit by a car before? Was it just her lucky day or some shit? How about the driver? Why did the driver not watch out for pedestrians during the morning rush hour? Was the driver drunk or otherwise impaired? Were they on their phone? Were they grooving out to their tunes and just lost in the moment? Were they late to work, decided to go speeding, and didn't have the reaction time to course correct when Usagi walked in front of them? Did they have to take a really bad shit and just threw caution to the wind to get to the nearest bathroom? What is up with that driver? Why do we get nothing on them? They're just spawned into existence to create an unbelievable level of danger immediately, and then they disappear from existence the instant they're off screen. How do you think that's a more intelligent writing choice? What the f***? How about Usagi? Do her ears not work? Cars make a lot of noise when they move quickly, in case that's a detail you're somehow unaware of. So Usagi should have heard the car as it approached her, but somehow she just didn't. Guess she's blind, deaf, and dumb. Was Luna, who Usagi was walking with, also somehow unaware of the speeding automobile heading right towards her? How? She's a fucking cat. She has superhuman senses. She would have been able to detect the car coming towards them far sooner than Usagi could. Why didn't Usagi look both ways before crossing the street on instinct? Or something that shows she has a degree of self-preservation that anyone would have if they walked to school alone every day for several years straight. Why is this acceptable in any way, shape, or form for this character who has been subjected to several supernatural battles up to this point and is a functioning superhero? Like, how does this make any sense whatsoever? How could she be this totally unaware of her surroundings after several instances of partaking in battles to the death against supernatural evil forces? When does the muscle memory or the reflexes kick in? Like, what in the goddamn hell is this? You prefer all that for Usagi and Luna's characters and the plot holes and contrivances that come with it, instead of Usagi running into a bad situation that isn't her fault and needing to be rescued by Mako, a character we also need to establish is a super strong tomboy who knows how to fight but is also kind and heroic and brave to kickstart the plot of the episode. You want Usagi and Luna to be brain-dead retards with zero spatial awareness and functioning senses instead of innocent victims of a nefarious third party? I do not want to appeal to your standards of writing. They are inherently flawed. Instead, let's focus on this f***ing gem of an argument. Classic's choices are bad because it appeals to boys. Appealing to boys in any way, shape, or form is bad because this is Sailor Moon. There are no boys allowed here. Do I even need to say it again? I'm saying it again. This is clearly and obviously sexist. You're gatekeeping an entire gender from this franchise. You're claiming that appealing to this gender, even slightly, is a detriment to this story. Even when I can point out all the objective benefits making this change adds to the story, your counter against all that is, but men bad though. Manga stands, I'm sorry, I just need to check something real quick. Are y'all claiming her? Are you sure you want to do that? Because if I were you, I would disavow so fast it'd make Haruka's head spin. Nah, you don't want this argument attached to you. This will be the death of you. For your sakes, I will attribute this commenter's arguments as pure fringe insanity, because there's no way you would claim a story that appeals to everyone is inherently worse than a story that appeals to girls only or boys only, and has rabbit-ass fans who gatekeep an entire gender in some misguided, unhinged attempt to maintain some amorphous concept of its quality. Also, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the concept that including action means that boys are being exclusively appealed to is reductive, shallow, tone-deaf, inconsistent with this person's earlier claim that the anime is sexist against girls, but then turns around and says including action in any story means it appeals to boys exclusively, and that's bad. In essence, saying that girls cannot find action appealing, it is only a thing boys can enjoy. Is that not sexist to reduce all females on the planet to people who cannot find enjoyment in action? Or is it all of the above? Let's go with all of the above. You know what appeals to everyone equally, regardless of your genitals? Adherence to logic, internal consistency, compelling characters, intelligent writing, and entertaining storytelling. That appeals to everybody. It's why Classic has fans all across the world of all shapes, sizes, ideologies, and yes, both sexes. And it's also why Crystal is already being forgotten by the world at large. The goal should never be excluding vast portions of the population for the sake of, I don't know, a political statement or whatever the f this dumb shit can be classified as. Like, what even is this point she's trying to make here? What the shit is this shit? How did you think any of this was a good idea to publicly attach to your name and specific fan community? This makes you look like an unhinged, bitter, moronic heifer with the ideological stability of a rusted and crusted over tilt-a-whirl. I don't know. I'm done with this one. Anybody else want to take a crack at this?
First, Usagi grew up in both the anime and the manga. I'll even say more. She actually became stronger spiritually before Usagi from the manga, which is obvious if you compare the final battles of the first arc in both versions. Lol. Mamoru wasn't perfect in the 90s anime, but at least he wasn't the incredibly boring kiss-kiss prince he was in the manga. I don't agree that Jupiter is just a tomboy in the anime. Her feminine side is shown very well. I factually find the Sailor Moon's central romance boring in both versions, but at least in the 90s anime it wasn't focused on as much. The show focused more on friendship than romance, and that's what I appreciate most about the show. I love the manga, but it really annoys me how this boring novel takes up all the damn time. Lol.
Yeah, that'll settle it. let me just drop this off for you. There you go. Good job, sweetie. 10 times more gorgeous. 10 times more gorgeous. 10 times more gorgeous.
One of the things I love about 90s Dark Kingdom is it feels like a kingdom. Queen Beryl actually called queen not because she is the leader but because she is an actual queen. She has dozens or maybe more than 100 servants and soldiers under her. Crystal's Beryl only have 4 plus 1 people, just sitting on a giant-ass temple. And those 4 are actually her minions. They are just mind-controlled. So pathetic.
Correct!
Yeah, but that's how it is in the manga. 90s anime was definitely better. It's my literal childhood. But Crystal follows the manga.
Adherence to the source material is not an argument for objective quality. Please try again. Yep. That's 10 times more gorgeous, I reckon.
That's why it's hard adapting a manga panel by panel. Like, it's understandable you need more exposition due to the limited medium, but in animation they have more liberties. But the writers did not care to drift off away from the manga a little more. And to begin with, the manga isn't that good.
Thank you!
Understandably so, Naoko was in a very tight schedule too. Panicked emoji. It has way too much plot holes and issues, and Crystal is proof of that.
This is an explanation. It's not an excuse. Not saying this person is trying to excuse the badness of Crystal and the manga, but for those of you who believe this is an excuse, this reply is for you. As stated previously, every mangaka is under a very tight schedule. To be clear, Naoko only had to do a chapter a month. Many mangaka have to do a chapter a week, hence the title Weekly Shonen Jump. So she didn't even have the same amount of pressure as many other mangaka did, and she still made more mistakes than they did with story and art, by her own admission. Stop trying to excuse her shortcomings as a writer, she just plain stinks. Get over it. And that's okay. So did Toriyama. God rest his soul. The difference between the two is Toriyama was honest about his failings, and most fans of his work will readily admit to the faults in his writing. Naoko, on the other hand, has rabbit-ass manga-worshipping NPCs that have neither the intelligence nor a respect for the craft to recognize everywhere she has messed up. And that's where we get all these dumb-ass arguments, fallacies, and explanations from. You know, the crap we've been going over for most of the video. It's okay to love Dragon Ball and point out where it goes off the rails. It's okay to praise Akira Toriyama for the absolute legend that he was, but recognize his weak points as an artist. It's okay to praise what story beats work in Dragon Ball and criticize the story beats that absolutely do not work. You can do it for literally any story, including Sailor Moon, which is all I've been doing in my videos. But you cannot excuse the bad parts of the work by throwing out all these explanations like they'll shield the thing you like from criticism. Everything in existence is open to criticism. You don't get to have a sacred cow here. You can give all the explanations for poor quality that you want, for whatever subject matter you want. It doesn't matter. Poor quality is poor quality. Calling a spade is not an attack on a work, nor the creator of that work, nor the fans of that work. It's just being objectively honest and real with people. A spade is a spade, and it should be called a spade. Now, when it comes to adapting manga, or any medium into another medium entirely, that comes with challenges, I agree. But that doesn't excuse the poor quality of the adaptation, especially when there are brilliant adaptations of manga to anime that exist. Look no further than One Punch Man Season 1, a gorgeous and faithful adaptation of the redrawn manga. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, a mostly faithful adaptation of the wonderful manga. Jujutsu Kaisen, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Do I really need to keep going? There are countless anime that adapt manga panel for panel and excel. There are countless anime that adapt manga panel for panel and are mid. There are countless anime that adapt manga panel for panel and suck ass. It's not because it's just this impossibly hard thing that no one can ever seem to get right. It's down to the execution. Execution is everything. How the people making the product create the product is what separates the good from the bad. The process in and of itself is not a reason to excuse bullshit creative choices in the writing or in the art. It just isn't. There are countless anime that adapt manga unfaithfully and excel. There are countless anime that adapt manga unfaithfully and are mid. There are countless anime that adapt manga unfaithfully and suck ass. Again, execution is the key here. Execution is everything. When assessing media adaptations, I frankly do not care how faithful it is to the source material. I care about the end product as its own thing, how good the work is on its own merits. The secondary focus is why the specific changes in the adaptation are present and if it improved or damaged the adaptation. Again, as its own thing. I do not use the source material as a metric to judge the objective quality of an adaptation, as that is not a metric that results in the best objective analysis of the work as a standalone piece. For example, if you judge the Lord of the Rings trilogy solely on how faithful an adaptation it is to the novels, you do a disservice to the immense quality of the film trilogy. You miss all the objectively great differences between the two works that enhance the film trilogy's story by avoiding the weaker portions of the book's story. And there are other aspects of the new medium that you'll outright ignore in this assessment that I believe is quite a detriment to the conclusion. Soundtrack, sound design, actors' performances, choreography, cinematography, computer graphics, character design, editing choices, so on and so on. So please understand, I do not use adherence to the source material as a measurement to judge an adaptation. Adaptations are not only allowed to make changes to the source material, they are expected to. Those differences, however, should be judged on their own merits based on how they aid or hurt the adaptation's version of the story. Which is why manga accuracy is not a f***ing argument, and it's why I will never entertain it as an argument. It misses the point of my assessments and analysis, and it misses the point entirely. If you, dear viewers and commenters, understand and or agree with my assessments, then please, I encourage you, do not entertain the manga accuracy sentiment from manga stans or crystal defenders. Just tell them it's not an argument, adherence to the source material does not reflect objective quality, and move on with your life.
That's why it's hard adapting a manga panel by panel. Like it's understandable you need more exposition due to the limited medium.
You do not need poorly written exposition in manga. You can choose to deliver exposition in creative, subtle, and layered ways. Do not assume that exposition must be directly vomited into the audience's face in this medium. There are infinite possibilities when choosing how to present exposition. Don't underestimate the craft of storytelling when it comes to manga/comics. The best comics in history have done exposition in ways similar to the best films in history. Again, execution is everything. That being said, this commenter does know what they're talking about when it comes to criticizing the manga's story. It indeed is littered with plot holes and issues that Crystal either copies wholeheartedly or somehow makes worse. Hello, double dream sequence in the first f***ing episode and sudden 4 generals romance plot. My point here, and I do hope everyone is paying attention to this part, explanations for poor quality do not excuse the poor quality, nor increase the quality of the product in question. I do not care why something is bad in a meta sense. I care why it is bad in the context of the work itself and how bad it is on a measurable scale. This is why I don't focus on the meta side of Sailor Moon in my analysis videos. I simply look at the work itself and praise or criticize it for what it is currently. I do not go deep into the cultural impact or historical significance of the series. I do not talk about the individuals behind the series. I do not talk about the history of the production of the series, none of that. I look at the end product as an end product, and that's it. I have no interest in receiving a metatextual answer as to how the text came to be. I'm only interested in the quality of the text. Once more for the manga stans dribbling in the back row after riding in on the short bus. Explanations for the poor quality of a product does not magically improve the quality of said product. Stop explaining the history behind the product. I'm only interested in exactly how much the product itself functions or fails on an objective level. Now, I realize I've been doing quite a lot of metatextual discussion in this video, but that's only because people keep jumping out of the text to talk about the meta information surrounding it, and because they're often wrong or believe these metatextual details are somehow more relevant than the quality of the text itself, I have to go out and clarify this stuff before I can jump back into the text where I want to be. When I make the next Sailor Moon analysis videos, I do not plan to bring any of this metatextual stuff with me, which is why I'm okay with getting into it here. And again, just so I'm being crystal clear, I appreciate this commenter. He's far more intelligent than the average manga stan or crystal defender, and I agree with 90% of what he said. It's just I found certain aspects of his comment disagreeable and interesting enough to serve as a basis to make some broader points I've been wanting to make anyway. So thank you for engaging with my work. Thank you for being intelligent and sincere, and I hope to see you again someday. But no, exposition can be pulled off well in the medium of manga. Just look at Berserk. You know, if you're at least 18 and are not faint of heart. 10 times more gorgeous, 10 times more gorgeous, 10 times more gorgeous, 10 times more gorgeous, yeah. 10 times gorgeous, 10 times more gorgeous.
To be fair, their first meeting in Crystal is quite like the one in the manga.
Not an argument, try again. 10 times more gorgeous, right?
I disagree with your comments about manga. I just like all iterations of Sailor Moon, each for a different reason. But I agree with your reasons why you should watch Sailor Moon.
Fair enough. You can't win over everybody, I suppose. Godspeed, my good man. Take notes, you. 10 times more gorgeous, I think.
If you need an explanation about why the other princesses are the guardians of Usagi, that's simple. Empires. Yes, the Moon Kingdom was an empire. The central or ruling kingdom would order their vassal kingdoms to hand over one of their princes to be trained as a royal guard for the future ruler of the central kingdom. Even princess could be taken as maid to be handmaidens for the princess of the central kingdom. So it makes perfect sense that Queen Serenity would have the princess from other planets to be made into Princess Serenity's guardians and handmaids.
That would be a decent explanation for the Sailor Princesses, if it was anywhere in the story at all. The problem is, this is all a fabrication born of your understanding of real-world concepts and your desire to help the story out by applying those concepts to the movie. And to be frank, it doesn't address my main issues with the Sailor Princesses crap, but let's just cover this aspect of it first. Is the Silver Millennium an empire that encompasses several different planetary kingdoms? Yes, that is in the story. Is it an empire that runs the same way that real-life empires worked? We don't know. That is not in the story. You have to understand that we are talking about crazy fantasy sci-fi locations here. We can't know for certain that the way Earth empires function is the way that these alien planetary kingdoms would work under an empire. Here's what we are told in this story. The Moon Kingdom is the main governing body of this solar system, with Earth being its own separate kingdom. The other planets that the Senshi originate from have kingdoms filled with citizens and castles that orbit their planets, which can somehow empower them or whatever by just calling out their names. Interesting how this never comes into play in the Stars arc, nor is it mentioned before the finale of the Dream arc by any of the characters that knew about them for the entire duration of the story, but that's a discussion for another time. We are shown that the Sailor Senshi are child soldiers who are several years older than the princess that they are duty-bound to protect. Therefore, the Sailor Senshi are permanent residents of the Moon Kingdom and most likely moved there from their home planets when Queen Serenity summoned them. And the Sailor Senshi, each and every one of them, are princesses of their respective planets. And with the addition of Cosmos, we are informed that the Sailor Senshi were spawned from the Galaxy Cauldron for the sole purpose of serving Princess Serenity. That is all the information we are given about this. Here are the problems that make it a terrible narrative decision. First and foremost, Luna, Artemis, Minako, and OG Queen Serenity never bring up the Sailor Princess's lore in the first 3 arcs. All of them have access to this information and just never share it, even when it would be useful because they could use their castles to empower themselves so that they can better defend the Earth and each other. As a matter of fact, Neo Queen Serenity, King Endymion, Pluto, and Chibiusa don't bring this up either, despite them knowing this information because they're from the future. Would have been pretty useful if they could meet up on one of the outer Senshi's castles and be out of reach of the Black Moon Clan, huh? But no. We can't get distracted by that stupid. Let's stay focused on the current stupid. There is no foundation or build-up for this reveal, it just happens in the middle of the climax of the dream arc, which is on brand for Naoko's writing, but that's not an excuse, that is an explanation for why it's so bad. And remember, I'm never asking for meta explanations, I'm only looking at the end results. And these end results are a pinwheel of piss. Second, and the most important aspect of this, princesses are monarchs. I know that's quite obvious, but follow me here. Princesses are royalty that help rule their kingdoms. That's what royals are supposed to do, regardless of their individual responsibilities within the kingdom. They are the ruling party, meaning the only monarchs that we know of on these other planets are these princesses that are destined to serve as the royal guard of the Moon Kingdom princess. So my question is, who is ruling these other planetary kingdoms while the Sailor Senshi are lounging around with the princess? Do they have families? Do they have a queen of their own to take care of their people? Is there a system in place for the other planets to have stability now that their Sailor Senshi are gone? Sailor Senshi, as we are shown in Season 3, are meant to protect their specific planet from the dangers of evil spacecraft. So who's defending their planets? The outer Senshi? How are they able to defend their own planets and the inner planets? Like, logistically. How is Sailor Pluto supposed to travel from the edge of the solar system to planet Mercury to defend it from the sun demons or whoever would be trying to f with Mercury? That seems really stupid. Why not have Sailor Mercury defend planet Mercury, because that's exactly what her primary f***ing job should be? Well, no, actually. Naoko retconned this in the Stars arc to introduce the idea of a galaxy cauldron where all of creation originates and it endlessly craps out goodies and baddies to fight for its entertainment, I guess. So if their cauldron-given purpose is to serve as a princess's bodyguards, then why the f*** are they also ruling monarchs of entirely different planets? How does that make any goddamn sense? Why wouldn't they just be the toughest soldiers from these planets, summoned to the main kingdom to be the royal guard of the princess? Why are they also princesses themselves? That doesn't make any sense. They don't function as princesses. They don't do princess things. They don't rule. They don't govern. They aren't even citizens of their planetary kingdoms. They're citizens of the Moon Kingdom. So why the fuck are we even bothering with this princess side plot that doesn't matter outside of this one moment in the climax of this one arc? The Senshi being princesses does not matter in the slightest when we look at any other aspect of the story. So what was the point in doing any of this shit? Furthermore, why are the manga stans losing their f***ing minds over something so pointless and stupid? Why would anybody look forward to seeing this animated? Why would anyone care at all about this random footnote of a plot point? What is this narrative appeal? Is it simply because the Sailor Senshi get pretty little dresses that make them look so fancy and special for all of 5 minutes? Is that literally it? You just wanted to see them put on ball gowns and do the shittiest cosplay of Disney princesses imaginable? That's all there is to this, isn't it? So what this commenter is doing is they're assuming everything makes sense off screen, when there's nothing in the actual story that would lead one to that conclusion. They've written the story for Naoko. They have not looked at the actual story and said, you know what? this could make sense if it was done like this. And still, this explanation doesn't address the main problems with the Sailor Princess's concept. I want to know why the 4 interplanetary kingdoms have been abandoned by their only monarchs, and how they function without that ruling body. I also want to know how they function without other defenses in place because they don't have their designated Sailor Senshi. Did Phobos and Deimos step up and become the defenders of Mars? Because none of the other inner planets have a Phobos and Deimos equivalent, so did they have to do some heavy-duty commuting between the 4 planets? Or was Sailor Saturn secretly commuting between all the 4 inner planets and defending them? Because that wouldn't make any sense for the entirety of the Infinity Arc, where everybody thinks Saturn is an evil Sailor Senshi. Also, she was supposed to remain dormant until summoned by the 3 talismans, so that would fly in the face of that as well. Did the other 3 outer Senshi really have to pull double duty and commute back and forth from one end of the solar system to the other to defend these planets? Did they also pull double duty and commute back and forth to govern over these planetary kingdoms? And before anyone says that there was no conflict during the entirety of the Silver Millennium because Silver Crystal Utopia and blah 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 blah, need I remind you that Crystal Tokyo was a literal remaster of the Silver Millennium? And how does the entirety of the Black Moon arc begin? Oh yeah, a random person on the utopian Earth was filled with super mega dark powers and took over Crystal Tokyo. Just randomly. Whilst under the influence and protection of the Silver Crystal, some dusty-ass edgelord hobo rose to power and f***ed everybody's shit up. Also, lest we forget the Dream Arc's inciting incident, Nehelenia literally came out of a mirror and into the very backyard of the Moon Palace. Zero warning, zero buildup, zero chill. That's 2 hyper-powerful, supremely evil beings just popping up out of nowhere and f***ing shit up. We've seen what happens when a Sailor Senshi is not posted right where they should be to prevent the fall of their kingdoms. We've seen how batshit insanely easy it is for these threats to just appear out of nowhere. Do not tell me these inner planets didn't need Sailor Senshi to protect them. We have absolutely no idea what was going on during the entire duration of the Silver Millennium. But with all the information given to us, we're shown hyper-powerful evil beings can literally pop up out of nowhere with zero warning at all, regardless of utopian status. Because the Galaxy Cauldron is a horrifying idea that shouldn't exist outside of Naoko Takeuchi's troubled mind. In short, the inner Senshi are born to protect their designated planets, while also simultaneously being born to protect the Moon Princess, and also born to be princesses of their own planets. None of it makes sense, but at the very least, the Sailor Senshi should be defending their designated planets, and they're just not, because moronic story is moronic. Codename Sailor V features a Venus person who was reborn and joined up with the Dark Kingdom because of Princess Venus. You telling me there was no one else in a similar situation from the other planets? We are talking about planets filled with actual people, are we not? How was there only one instance of a citizen of the inner planets being reincarnated and seeking out their princess? How does that even begin to make any sense to anybody? Where are the Mercury people, the Mars people, the Jupiter people, and the rest of the Venus people? Were they even reincarnated? Do the princesses of these planets give a single shit about their people being reincarnated? Do they want to inquire about them, look for them, even spare a single passing thought towards these people? Wouldn't this also apply to their families, if they even have those? Do they not care about the queens of these inner planets that possibly existed and covered the Sailor Princess's slack because they were born with contradictive purposes? Did Saturn or the Galaxy Cauldron or whoever the f is in charge of the reincarnation thing, did they just not care about reincarnating the innocent people that got massacred during the Silver Millennium's fall, except for Adonis from Venus for some ungodly reason? How and why was he reincarnated, but not any of the presumably thousands of other Venus people? Let's be honest, thousands is an exceptionally low estimate when we're talking about a planet comparable to Earth in size. Did Minako never ask Artemis to find other Venus people she could connect with and potentially work with to help protect the Earth? Why not? Does she not give a shit about getting all the help she can with protecting her princess? The girl she has several times sacrificed her own personal happiness and free will for? How does that work? Why has none of the central cast ever asked Luna, Artemis, Chibiusa, Setsuna, or OG Queen Serenity about any of this information? All of these characters are readily available to talk to, so what the f are they doing not asking these important questions? For those of you not following, these are all the questions that do not have answers in the story. They are not excused away because Moon Kingdom am Empire lol, it doesn't address the actual problems with this decision. Whereas keeping the Sailor Senshi as powerful soldiers that serve the Moon Royal family sidesteps most of these issues. There are still a ton of problems that need to be addressed, but at least the Sailor Senshi aren't princesses that don't give a shit about their people and their kingdoms canonically. And also, we have at least 4 civilizations worth of innocence that are just straight up never addressed in the reincarnation plot point, except one lone Venus guy, so codename Sailor V could have a dramatic twist for its climax, I guess. So to this commenter, thank you for providing a somewhat adequate explanation that Naoko or the Crystal creators could have featured in the story. But I need you to understand that none of what you said is supported in the actual story. Therefore, you made it up. So hey, congratulations, you're a better writer than Naoko Takeuchi and the Crystal creators. It's not a high bar by any stretch of the imagination, but by Jove have you cleared it. Give yourself a hand and don't defend this shit anymore. It's really not worth your efforts.
10 times more gorgeous.
The classic anime was great. I love it.
Well, that's all there is to that story, so no need for any more questions.
But the story makes 0 sense. Every Sailor Moon arc connects to the past and the inevitable future of Neo Queen Serenity and King Endymion. The classic anime forgets all about continuity and about Crystal Tokyo. That's why you have really stupid crap like Galaxia freeing the Helenia, just because. Instead of doing it so she would force the Sailor Senshi to reveal their true powers and expose their Sailor crystals. I think the classic anime had way better character development and made you care about the villains a lot. But the narrative was just so way off the mark.
Incorrect. The issue with this mindset is, this person has extrapolated a complaint for the final season of this series, aka the worst season of this series, and applied it to the entire show. That's not how this works, booby. Seasons 1 through 3 are phenomenally well written. There are dozens upon dozens of little details that all tie together in ways you cannot appreciate until you rewatch it with a fine-tooth comb. And even then, I'm still noticing things that strengthen the plot and world building especially. For instance, someone else stated that in R, Ami going overseas to study abroad was random, with the implication that it was contrived and unsupported in the narrative. And so I went back and watched the Ami-centric episodes of the previous season and of the Doomtree arc to see if it truly was random. As it turns out, no, it wasn't. In fact, the opposite is true. Ami getting to study abroad is an expected inevitability. Allow me to explain why. From before Ami even meets Usagi, she is scoring high on every mock exam and standardized test that she can get into. She is, in no uncertain terms, aggressively asserting herself in all academic circles as one of the most brilliant, gifted, and driven students in the country. This doesn't let up when she becomes a Sailor Senshi. She still keeps up with her studies and scores in the top percentile of these country or prefecture-wide tests. Tests that are specifically designed to find promising young minds to point universities, foundations, and government programs at to give them life-changing opportunities. Meaning, Ami being the top scorer in the nation/prefecture/tri-state area/whatever would eventually lead to one of the many interested parties that benefit from these test results, giving her an opportunity to study abroad. Thus, it is expected that Ami would receive the opportunity to study abroad to further her dream of becoming a doctor, her central motivation for doing all this studying in the first place. It may feel random if you're not really paying attention or watching it for the first time, but really, if she didn't receive an opportunity like this, it would have been very suspicious. So, if it's inevitable for Ami to get the opportunity to study abroad, then the writers would have to place this moment at the perfect spot to maximize the narrative and thematic point of this plot and character development. What better place could this have happened than during the breakup arc, when Usagi is having to deal with Mamoru leaving her? Now Ami is leaving too, and it's not just that the friendship is ending, although that would be a rough blow by itself, it's the fact that the one person who has been with Usagi the longest, literally when there were no other Sailor Senshi in the mix, Ami was right by her side. That person is now leaving her as well. Basically, two of the people she's known the longest in this crazy Sailor Senshi life are abandoning her. How will she deal with this pressure? How will the rest of the Senshi get along without their brain, their level-headed, gentle voice of reason, an essential part of their group? How will they cope? And most notably for Ami, what's more important, her destiny as a Sailor Senshi or her dream to be a doctor like her mother? A dream she's had all her life, the main thing that drives her day to day, the motivation that enabled her to endure her loneliness for all these years. Are the friendships she's waited all her life for more valuable to her than her life's ambition? All of these thematic questions and more build on top of each other in a way that wouldn't work if this happened in Super S or Stars. It has to happen in R, and it has to happen during the breakup arc, which thematically is all about putting relationships through the ringer and finding what these characters truly value. So that's why Ami having the chance to study abroad happens when it happens. It's perfectly logical and dramatically satisfying. Classic repeatedly does things like this, where they purposefully set up certain conflicts, thematic questions, character development, etc., and wait for the best moment possible to explore those story beats to get the maximum use out of all these plot points. Stars, by contrast, does not do that. Stars frickin' sucks. But even if it sucks and is poorly written and whatever, it doesn't somehow negate all the work and effort put into making seasons 1 through 3 as excellently written as they are. So don't do this. Don't paint the entire show as bad by pointing to 1 or 2 plot points that are shitty but don't affect all the good that was done in this show. That's simply disingenuous, and we don't do that here. What I do is I point to all the things that don't work about Crystal, and I map out how it damages the individual episode or if it damages the show as a whole. Luna's characterization, Usagi's lack of heroic potential, Morga and the Dark Kingdom sucking at their job, the lack of well-written comedy, exposition, dialogue, the contrived moment-to-moment beats that enable the plot to happen, all of that is bad for episode 1. Not necessarily the coming episodes. The dream sequences and Mamoru being in a tuxedo are bad for future episodes, and I state that in the video. I may tease future problems that begin in episode 1, but I mainly keep all criticisms focused on episode 1. What I did not do is point at something that only applies to episode 1 and extrapolate that out to claim that one thing is the sole reason why the entire show is bad. Naru realizing the Morga incident wasn't a dream is bad for episode 1, not necessarily for any other episode. Usagi not reacting properly to the crazy supernatural things in episode 1 doesn't make any following episode worse. Umino being a flat nothing of a character doesn't mean the whole show is terrible. I don't take any of these points and claim they alone are the sole reason why this entire show is ass, because that's dishonest dookie and I want to make actual credible arguments. So don't confuse what this commenter is doing for what I do in my videos. Every claim I make, I back it up, and I back it up as best I can. I use references, I use examples, I use solid argumentation that appeals to logic and common sense. I give you, the viewer, ample context to judge my assessment for yourselves. This person is just going, lol, the whole show is bad because Galaxia revived Nehelania that one time and that am random. Also, let's not forget that in the manga, this same character this commenter is bringing up holds a motivation that literally makes no sense. I cover it in the Eternal Movie Rant. This is her daughter's literal first birthday, and this bitch literally showed up out of nowhere, out of this mirror. They've never met her before. They don't know who she is. This is how she approaches them. They're like, what the f***?
Evil AF?
Look at how they animated her f***ing hair. It's so bad.
shitty.
It's so bad.
You look at that little...
Especially the fucking hair highlighted.
Oh
on
god,
on
it's
the
so bad.
strands there, that's just
It's
really
so bad. It's so fucking bad.
Their art direction
Why?
was did not
Why?
does not lend to animation.
Look at when she moves her head. What changes with the hair? What changes? It slows
tilts.
down, but that's it.
It tilts a tiny bit.
It slows down and it tilts. It doesn't actually change with the movement of her head. What the fuck? It's not connected to her fucking head. So then she's like, lol, I'm dark, dude. Haha, lol, here I am. And she's like, bitch, get the fuck, who are you? She's like, oh, is that how you welcome a fellow resident of the moon? Oh my god, I came all the way from the depths of the moon itself. And they're like, bitch, what the fuck? We never heard of you. And then she's like, no, I have. You're really evil and you're really bad. If we couldn't notice that by the fucking dark aura surrounding you, you fucking dusty ass bitch. Get the fuck out of here. And she's like, oh my god, I buried the memories because I was traumatized. So, okay, that was important. I'm sorry. There was only peace and happiness, and there was no darkness on the moon, blah, 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 blah. Everything was good and great, but then this dark bitch came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh my god, she's gonna be, upsetting everything for everybody. She's a bitch. So yeah, whatever. By the way, they do not explain it outside of that. This super powerful being that's really evil and really gonna fuck everybody up. Just nobody noticed when she just, out of nowhere, she just kind of showed up. We need a plot, so we need the bad guy to be here, so she's here now. Okay. And she says, oh, you're an uninvited guest? If you've landed on this planet, it's not a planet, it's the moon, you dumb bitch. It's not a planet, it's literally a moon. But anyway, on this planet seeking peace, we welcome you. However, you will not be forgiven for spreading darkness, evil darkness, on this planet. It's not a planet, it's a moon. It's a moon that can, house life, but it's still a moon because it's whatever. It's not important. So she's literally like, okay, evil person that has crashed my daughter's first birthday. Okay, I'll let you stay if you're not gonna be a fucking evil bitch. You can stay and, you can chill. That's fine. But if you're gonna be an evil bitch, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. That's literally what she says. And so this is her response. This is her epic, multifaceted, layered response. Oh my god, look at her fucking hand. Look at her hand. Look at her fucking hand.
How long does it stay that way?
This entire shot, it does not move. Look at her hair. Oh shit, it did move, never mind. But that was a long time where it didn't. Let's absorb it. Let's absorb it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh god, it's so bad. Her hair is terrible. Anyway, you weren't paying attention to what she was saying, so she's like, okay, in response to don't be a bitch if you want to be at this party, that's fine. Even though I didn't invite you, it's still fine that you're here because, I'm a chill person. But, don't be an asshole. This is my daughter's birthday. It's her first birthday. I just had a kid. So, please be nice. She's like, Queen, darkness is necessary. If you could lend me a hand with something, if you could accept the darkness, this is really bad, by the way, as a still shot. I have so many...
okay.
I have so many questions. So, why is her arm longer than her arm when they're essentially the same height?
Oh my god.
Literal inch. Why is her arm longer than her arm? Why is her hair matted at the top instead of mirroring? Because this is supposed to be a mirror, and she literally lives in a mirror and has mirror fucking powers? Why are you not reflecting her hair? Why is your hair all stupid and ugly and matted up here, and hers is kind of flowy and kind of, you know, stretched out a little bit. Why
Because
is
someone
this,
don't know composition.
why? So bad. And she calls her grotesque, which is pretty accurate because look at her fucking hair. Oh my god, that was badly animated. Look at that.
Bruh.
It looks like her hair ate it, but she was supposed to dodge it. It looked like the hair ate it, though. It's like, no. I can't do it. Oh my god, she's so terribly animated. Why is her mouth crooked? Why is her mouth crooked? I don't understand. Alright, so more plot things. Where there's light, there's darkness. Everyone knows that. Thank you. That doesn't mean you get to be a bitch at my first birthday for my only daughter. You fucking uninvited, matted whore. Get the fuck out of here. So anyway, where there's light, there's darkness. Darkness calls the light, and the light calls the darkness. But bitch, I did not call you because I don't know who you are. So
Can you tell Xehanort's wife to shut up?
Please. She wishes she is his side bitch, okay? She is his side bitch. That's why she's thirsty for attention right now. So she's literally being evil and a dick after she just told her, you can be here. I'm okay with you being here, even though I didn't invite you, and you crashed my party, and this is literally like my living room, essentially, but it's fine. You can stay, just don't be evil, don't be a dick, and you can stay. And she's like, lol,
Are you starting shit?
I'm gonna start shit. And she's like, I told you not to do that, now I gotta flame your ass. And so she flames her. And, oh god, that looks terrible. That looks so bad. Oh, that looked bad. And she's like, okay.
Your presence was at the very least tolerated until you
Oh, it's so bad.
started shit. Like, you literally showed up to start shit and found out.
Okay, so here it is.
Around.
So then this is her reason, by the way. This is her reason for being the big bad of this entire movie. This is her reason. Okay, I'll let her finish, but then I'll sum it up. So she's like, wah, here's my gift to you. Accept my beautiful curse. I'm gonna curse you. I curse you and your baby. This kingdom will eventually fall because bad juju. She's gonna die before succeeding to the throne. That is my gift to you. And if you're wondering, hey, that sounds familiar, it's because it's literally Sleeping Beauty, only worse.
I was about to say.
Yeah, it's literally, it's Sleeping Beauty, but worse. That's what it is. And so we get that little effect, and she's like, well, haha, we're out of the flashback, and we're now, at the current time. Ha ha ha, I cursed you, and that's why you guys fucking lost. Lol, you suck, I rule. And so that is her motivation for being the big villain, is I crashed the birthday party of an infant, and the mother and queen, ruler of this entire land that I just showed up in, and I crashed into her place. She said, okay, I'm gonna give you one last chance, just don't be an asshole. Just don't cause trouble, and it's fine. You can stay. We'll be friends. I'll befriend you. Whatever. Just don't be a dick. And then she said, "Lol, I'm a dick though." And so she's like, "Okay, well I gotta ban you." Yeah, I curse you. Yeah, I'm gonna come after you, man, your descendants, and I'm gonna be an evil bitch later. Yeah, this is vengeance on you. You caused your own downfall for no goddamn reason whatsoever. See that, right? You see that, right, you dumb bitch? You see that you caused your own downfall for literally nothing. You didn't even ask for anything.
And people call that plot a magnum opus. It's lit.
Oh my god, it's so good, you guys.
When a Disney movie does that better in its sleep.
Maleficent, what made Maleficent work is because everyone knew Maleficent was her namesake, Maleficent. They didn't invite her because she is an enemy to the kingdom. She's an established enemy of the kingdom. Of course we're not gonna invite you. But then she's like, lol, I see an opportunity to you dicks over, so that's what I'm gonna do at your most vulnerable moment. I'm gonna ruin your happy moment because I'm a bitch. And I'm gonna curse your daughter, bam, because this is my gift to her, ha ha ha. And then she skedaddles. because she's an asshole. But she's established to hate these people and be an asshole, so it's fine. This bitch literally came out of nowhere today and was like, lol, I'm evil. And she's like, please don't be evil around my daughter. I mean, we can be friends if you want to be friends. Lol, I'm evil though. And she's like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna get rid of you now. Lol, I'm gonna come back and be evil again. Vengeance, I curse you. It's so f***ing nonsensical, and people swear by it. People swear by this. Do you understand me? They're like, no. This is the best arc. This is one of the best arcs of the fucking series, guys. Because she's such a, like, good character. She's so multifaceted, guys. She's so, like, awesome. She's such a girl boss. I'm like, she's an edgy, dusty, crusty bitch who literally caused her own downfall for nothing. I don't even know what she wants before we meet her in the current day. What did she come here for? Why is she here? She never tells them why she's here. She's just like, bitch, I didn't get an invitation. I didn't know you existed. What do you mean? What do you mean? I didn't give Barney an invitation either because he doesn't f***ing exist. What do you mean? That makes no sense, and it's the entire reason the dream arc even happens. Nihilania is also a detail that at least some of the characters should be expecting, considering their memories have long since been restored or were never lost in the first place. Or, here's a thought that the manga never considers: how about asking OG Queen Serenity's hologram all about the history of the Silver Millennium, and perhaps Nihilania will come up. You know, after the whole Dark Kingdom incident, one would think that OG Queen Serenity would immediately go, you know, by the way, not sure if this will ever come up, but there's this evil dusty bitch called Nihilania. Apparently she's a creature of pure darkness and evil or some stupid edgy bullshit, and when you were born, I banished her into the mirror dimension. But as I was doing that, she kinda cursed you guys, which is probably how the Dark Kingdom was able to attack the Moon Kingdom in the first place, now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, look out for any weird shit happening as a result of an eclipse or whatever. One would think the loving mother of Princess Serenity would mention that in the year or so before the dream arc happens, but nah. God, this manga is so friggin' stupid. The point is, if you want to talk about plot points that make zero sense and destroys the plot of the entire series, yeah, the manga's got you covered. The anime doesn't do that type of stuff until we get to Super S and Stars. And even Super S didn't break the entire show with Nihilania's motivation and backstory. It complicates things, and believe me, it doesn't make perfect logical sense when you really study it all out, but it doesn't break the narrative. The plot is still intact, despite the issues that arise from it. The manga and Crystal cannot say the same. So don't be like this person. Don't take one flaw with an aspect of something and extrapolate that out to bring down the entire work. Not unless you got the receipts to back that claim up.
10 times more gorgeous.
Your meat riding to the next level.
Okay, this is really weird. So again, thank you for showing an interest in my sex life, but my meat's writing patterns are private. I appreciate the concern, I suppose, but let's just calm down on that. If you'd like to continue discussing genitalia, might I suggest a urologist with no friends? You two could hit it off. He's very invested in male meat writing patterns as well. I can give you his information after the video's over. Discreetly, of course.
The 90s anime is good, but the manga or Crystal anime is way better, because S is terrible and Super S is super mid.
More importantly, how the f*** do you say S is terrible but Super S is mid with a straight face? What the hell is this shit? Fucking no? S is possibly the best season. It's like universally understood that S is one of the best seasons, if not the best season. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you bring up my genitals as your opening move? I'm so confused right now.
It's all in my opinion. Respectfully.
Oh! Oh, okay! Well, that makes it okay then!
Well, shit, son, that's all you had to say. Never mind, guys, he put up the opinion shield and added respectfully after it, so it's fine. Everything he just said is fine. Nothing to see here. Everybody knows that you can say whatever you want and just attach "in my opinion" behind it and you're untouchable. Like, how do you guys not know about this life hack? I can literally slander and defame and dox whoever I want as long as I say respectfully afterwards. I can't get into any trouble, like ever. Duh, that's just how the world works. It's scientifically proven in junk, morons. Respectfully. See, now you can't get mad at me because I said respectfully after I said morons, you morons. In my opinion. Man, this is easy. Integrity is for losers. Respectfully.
I didn't ask for part 2.
Plus the 90s anime characters are worse than the manga or Crystal.
The anime characters cannot be worse than the manga characters because the manga doesn't have characters. It has plot devices, cliches, and stereotypes, things that look sorta like characters but have next to no depth nor development. The anime automatically has better characters because it f***ing has characters. Nice try, but you have to back up your statements when you make them around here. This isn't subjectivity land where all you do is say what you feel and everybody just goes along with that. No. Back it up or shut it up.
And the ending for the 90s anime is trash. Even Naoko Takeuchi hates the 90s anime. It's because it's nothing like the manga.
Who cares? Who cares? Who cares?
What the hell do you even think this means? Stephen King hates The Shining. Does that magically mean it's a bad film? If tomorrow Naoko put out a tweet that said, you know what? My Sailor Moon manga is actually pretty shit, lol. The 90s anime was way better, fam. Does that mean your opinion has to change now? What is this logic? Let me be perfectly clear. I give zero fucks about who does or doesn't like the stuff I deem good. That's the beauty of objectivity. The metric of quality is not, do the feels of another person match my feels? It is simply, does this story have internal consistency, adhere to cause and effect, and run on sustainable logic? That's it. Naoko Takeuchi's likes and dislikes have never factored into my assessment of this series, and they never will. If she doesn't like the 90s anime, then that woman has poor taste. This is a nothing point, sir. Just for that, I'm not gonna give you that urologist's number. Nope, you lost out on a real one now. Quick sidebar. This is called an appeal to authority fallacy, which is a big no-no in argumentation, which is what this genitally obsessed gentleman's comment is trying to do. Argue his position on classic versus the manga/crystal. He's not doing great with it, if that somehow isn't apparent. An appeal to authority fallacy is when someone says, this authority figure said X, so all must believe X without thinking about it for themselves. Your classic, my mom's a doctor and she told me I don't have to blah blah blah. And then that person has to go to the hospital because they didn't do what they were supposed to because, as it turns out, Dr. Mommy isn't a divine keeper of all medical knowledge. It's an invitation to shut your brain off and just go along with whatever statement the person presents in the argument as factually correct, without actually providing any facts or solid logic to prove the statement. In this case, Naoko Takeuchi, the creator of the Sailor Moon manga, which started this whole franchise, said X about the classic anime, meaning she agrees with me about the classic anime, and you should too. So I'll reiterate the only appropriate counter to this fallacy. I don't give a single shit about Naoko Takeuchi's likes, dislikes, thoughts, or opinions on anything. I don't give a single shit about what anyone likes or dislikes concerning what I'm looking at objectively. Objectivity isn't determined by how many people share the same feels about it. It's simply based on the standard I've been using for every assessment on this channel: adherence to logic, cause and effect progression, and internal consistency. None of that is contingent upon how anybody feels, including me. It's not based upon what I like or dislike, what I personally think, or what my personal opinion is on anything. Does it make sense within itself? Is it using cause and effect to progress the story? Does it adhere to logic? That's it, and that's all that is considered when assessing something objectively. Notice how a middle-aged Japanese woman's likes and dislikes never factored in? Yeah, that's cause that's never gonna matter when it comes to objectivity. So this right here, pointless to bring up when we're talking about objective quality. Stop doing this. It's not only a fallacy, it's a meaningless aside. I have never cared about Naoko's opinion on anything. She is not the arbiter of what is good and what is bad. Only the objective standards the person making the assessment adheres to matters. And here's a fun little activity you can do if you ever run into someone doing an appeal to authority fallacy with you, dear viewer. When the person tells you what the authority figure says, ask them what would happen if the authority figure changed their mind tomorrow, and watch them squirm because they didn't think that far ahead. Because they never do. Also, you forgot to put "in my opinion" and "respectfully" afterwards, dude. You forgot your force field. You left yourself wide open, bruh. What are you doing? How will you ever be perceived as a respectful individual now? In fact, I'm starting to think you have no idea how respect as a concept works, buddy. Have you just been lying this whole time you were saying respectfully? What a deep betrayal. I thought I could count on your life hacks, man. My whole worldview has been upturned by this critical oversight. If only he had kept up his opinion shield and the respectfully dodge pattern. Now I'll never be able to get away with blatant disrespect, petulant comments, and unsubstantiated assumptions. No!
10 times more gorgeous.
Oh my god, the bad animation montages had me in tears. Crying, laughing, MFG. The editing, the shade, the saltiness. These vids have to take ages to make, but I'll wait as long as I have to for more. You're a rock star.
Well, I have been known to dabble. Honestly, at this point, same. 10 times more gorgeous. Yep.
Animation, 90s. Story, Crystal. Especially Season 3 to Cosmos.
Well, at least we can agree on the difference in animation between the two.
After listening to your talking points.
Whoa, hey.
I don't have talking points, bud. I'm not a politician. I'm not a daytime talk show host. My videos are not me just talking out of my ass about stuff so I can push some political agenda, nor are they a broadcast of my feelings or opinions only. My videos are me making a case for or against something, creating an assessment of quality using objectivity while sprinkling in some subjectivity for stylistic, entertainment, and comedic effect. I'm critiquing and criticizing in my videos. That's entirely different from having talking points. So you can have that part of this comment back because I reject that premise. I want to be perfectly clear on this. I am not just expressing my opinion on Crystal or Classic. I am arguing a point. I am producing evidence that supports that point. I am taking account of opposing positions and objectively countering them. I am not talking exclusively about my preference. I am giving an objective assessment. That's what a critique is, in case you're not following. There's nothing wrong with complaining or sharing an opinion, but don't confuse what I'm doing in my videos for that, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm objectively comparing the two adaptions to highlight the vast difference in quality between the two. So talking points, no, that's totally inaccurate. Don't reduce my arguments and assessment into talking points. It's reductive, inaccurate, and rudely dismissive. K, thanks.
I still strongly disagree that 90s is, quote-unquote, superior to Crystal.
That's fine. You don't have to agree. Doesn't make anything I've said in the video incorrect, so I don't care. Feel how you want. Take notes, you.
Despite yes, the story does go by too fast.
You can say that again.
But Crystal's story arcs are stronger than 90s.
What do you mean by stronger, good sir? Because what I mean when I say stronger is more internal consistency, adheres to logic more closely, and utilizes cause and effect more than coincidence or contrivances to progress the story. That's what I mean when I say a particular story is stronger than another, or, as I normally put it, objectively better written. I've said this many times before and proved it many times before. Crystal is not objectively better written than Classic. My videos are filled with evidence to back that statement up. Let's see what this gentleman has for evidence of Crystal's stronger story.
I'll take Destiny to be together, two them being bickering jerks to each other.
So we're going with personal preferences as objective evidence. Alrighty then. Now, granted, I also use my personal preferences when I criticize the romance between Classic and Crystal. The difference, though, is that I also provide an objective assessment of how each romance is portrayed. Whether or not someone prefers the love at first sight cliche or the enemies to lovers cliche, it is undeniable that Crystal's portrayal of the love at first sight cliche is horrendous. They don't admit their feelings, they don't flirt, they don't attempt to get to know each other, they just stare at each other, and then Usagi walks away telling the audience her kokoro went doki doki, OMG. That fucking sucks. Why don't they act upon their love? Why don't they continue trying to talk? Why does Usagi have to tell us her heart is still pounding? Why do any of this like this? It's unnatural, it's jarring, it's glaring, and poorly written in the most obvious way possible. It's trash. It's straight up trash. This ain't it, Chief. You want a good love at first sight scene? We've got plenty to choose from. Now, the bickering jerks thing is incredibly uncharitable at best and straight up inaccurate at worst. Because first of all, did you not notice that they still bicker and argue in Crystal? Their first interactions with each other are them bickering. He calls her names, she yells at him, they act rude to each other. Like, this is a constant between the two stories. There is no dichotomy where Crystal has zero bickering and all the doki dokis, whereas Classic only has bickering and no doki dokis. That's not the situation, good sir, but thank you for being intentionally dishonest about it by tipping your hand. The difference, once again, is the execution of that bickering, not the very fact that they bicker. Classic has them not like each other and slowly gain a rapport that morphs into mutual respect or appreciation one way or the other. Then their feelings start to develop subconsciously, surfacing in different ways that neither of them truly noticed, until the reveal happens for both of them. And immediately the bickering stops and they act on that love they are now aware of. Whereas Crystal simply has them bicker while Usagi blushes and acts squirrely, then exposits to the audience that her heart is pounding because she's in love, but she's not gonna admit it because plot. Then the reveal happens and the bickering stops and they're in love and stuff, but there's no reason they don't act upon their feelings before the reveal. There's no reason why they bicker. There's no reason why anything should change between them post-reveal, unlike in Classic. All of that is taking personal preferences aside and analyzing it objectively, which is what I do in my videos in case you somehow haven't picked up on that yet. After giving this objective assessment, I add on my preferences just as icing on the cake, where I go over the merits of the enemies to lovers cliche and the demerits of the love at first sight cliche. Classic banks on the pros of its chosen cliche. Crystal suffers under the cons of its chosen cliche. So I mean, you can prefer one trope over the other, but the execution of that trope is where the rubber meets the road, not what you personally like more. And for the record, bickering and arguing in a relationship is realistic and actually a sign of a very healthy relationship. A lack of teasing and banter in a relationship is actually a bad sign. Look it up.
And it's not cute.
Speak for yourself there, pal. I find it adorable, and several million people find it cute. What, you gonna tell us we're wrong for feeling the way we do? Cause that's not a good look for your argument. Just saying.
There is nothing subtle from Classic, even on the rewatch.
Okay, bet. Here is an extensive list of subtle things in just season 1 of Classic. The Tsukino household nameplate introduces the Tsukino family quite subtly. We know Kinji is her father's name and that he is older than her mother. We know that Usagi is a big sister to a younger brother named Shingo. All of this is information we learn before we even see these characters, and while Shingo being called Usagi's little brother is not subtle, the introduction of the entire family by the nameplate is. Luna's character arc from episode 1 to 30. Her subtle change from an antagonistic, mysterious, distrusting personality shifts into who she becomes for the rest of the series. This character arc is handled so subtly that most viewers don't recognize how far she's come or even noticed a character arc for her during this length of time. Episode 31 is the first Luna-centric episode that features an obvious change in her character, but she has been developing and changing since episode 1. Luna's portrayal in the story is ambiguous and often given a negative or ominous slant during episodes 1 through 7. Though her portrayal gets notably more positive and virtuous afterwards, she is still keeping secrets from the Senshi that is unnecessary and sometimes harmful or detrimental to them. Again, this is so subtle that most viewers don't recognize this behavior as shady or how it negatively reflects on Luna. Mamoru and Usagi's relationship development, specifically Mamoru's feelings toward Usagi from episode 1 to 34. Mamoru, with every passing interaction, becomes more and more open with Usagi, less and less angry and hateful, shifting to playful teasing and jesting, while offering advice and assistance to genuinely help her. He begins showing care and appreciation for her, culminating in his behavior in episode 35, when he tells her to never change before going to face certain doom. Throughout the episode, he's protective of her, determined to sacrifice himself for her, and is willing to share his innermost secrets and thoughts with her, before she reveals her true identity as Sailor Moon. Jadeite's feelings for Beru are incredibly subtle, to the point that I didn't notice it until actively studying the episodes and taking extensive notes. Subsequently, Jadeite's mental deterioration is slow and practically unseen until episode 10 at the earliest. You really have to be paying attention to see the gradual change from cool and in control to unhinged and desperate. Mamoru's motivation and his identity as Tuxedo Kamen is handled very subtly in episodes 1 through 18. We don't actually know why he's always around the places Usagi is, nor why Tuxedo Kamen helps Sailor Moon like he does. Episode 19 is when Usagi gets the opportunity to ask him about his motivations, and it's revealed that even he doesn't really know. And episode 26 is the first time Tuxedo Kamen becomes integrated into Mamoru's personality, instead of being a split personality from him. Only from this point forward does his motivations become clear. Save Sailor Moon because he is compelled to through a supernatural connection to the fragment of the silver crystal inside of her, and he finds a connection between her and the woman in his dreams. Find the rainbow crystals and forge the silver crystal proper because the woman in his dreams beckons him to do so. And there are villains who wish to use the silver crystal for nefarious purposes that would harm innocent people. Eventually, he reveals in episode 34 that the silver crystal may hold the key to restoring the memories he lost when he was 10 years old, and that these ominous dreams of his had started all those years ago and never stopped. The symbolism of Crybaby Usagi's graceful change relating to multiple core themes throughout the entire series will absolutely be unnoticed by first-time viewers. The symbolism of Black Cat mythology adding ambiguity to Luna's portrayal. The symbolism of demon possession solely dependent on the visual design and references of Morga in episode 1 and several other Yoma throughout the season. Even the specific way that Yoma are manifested and implemented support this theme and is never stated outright. The design of most of Sailor Moon's transformation items referencing the different Senshi she encounters that season. She does not have jewels representing the outer Senshi until S, sort of, but definitely for stars. The symbolism of roses/flowers referencing the core theme of the series gracefully transforming into something beautiful and fully matured. The change from Moon Tiara Boomerang to Moon Tiara Action to emphasize and support the demon possession theme. Again, this is not a detail I noticed until I was actively studying every detail of episode 1. Tuxedo Kamen's line, "Crying isn't going to solve anything, Sailor Moon," is actually correct, though viewers can mistakenly believe that the supersonic waves activated by her crying did solve the problem. However, the subtlety comes in when taking the line literally and analyzing the supersonic waves attack. The supersonic waves did not defeat Morga, which is the true problem of this scene. It knocked out the mind slaves and incapacitated her momentarily, but she was not defeated. and the energy she stole was not returned because of the supersonic waves. Therefore, crying really didn't solve anything. Moon Tiara action did. Morga, disguised as Naru's mom, behaving slightly off. I don't go over this in the episode 1 analysis vids because I noticed it during editing and I didn't want to delay releasing part 3 by going way back to part 1's content to add this bit in. But anyway, Morga does a few things that don't register on the first few watches, but after studying the episode with a fine-tooth comb, I noticed some nice subtle touches. For one, she treats Usagi as if she's never met her before. This is done so subtly that not even Naru and Usagi notice it. But the way she addresses Usagi, her daughter's best friend for at least a year or two, seems like she's meeting her for the first time. She treats her like a customer, not like the family friend that she is. The next detail that could be easily overlooked is when the Osapi customers shove Naru and Usagi aside and crowd all on top of them, Morga doesn't do anything about that. She literally does nothing. She doesn't call out to them, she doesn't ask if they're alright, she doesn't check on them, she doesn't try to make the crowd calm down so she can attend to them. She just continues on with the sale. I understand that it's played for laughs and it's meant to be slapstick fun, but her characterization is consistent with that of a demon posing as a human. She's doing a decent enough job to fool everybody, but if anyone stopped and thought about any of her actions, they would realize something is off about her. It makes complete sense that we, the audience, can pick up on these details, but the characters themselves wouldn't be able to. Not until it's already too late. The musical choices in the Morga fight perfectly support and follow the action and tone of the scene, including the individual shifts and changes in tone. The fact that the particular track used in the scene is also the transformation song is especially fantastic, because it uses subtle changes in the arrangement to effectively change the entire tone of the song to fit the action scene. The Dark Kingdom being unaware of Sailor Moon's existence until episode 3 and how Jadeite discovers Sailor Moon is subtle. In episode 1, he doesn't know why Morga has failed, just that she failed due to the energy dissipating suddenly. Jadeite reacts harshly towards Morga due to her failure, not caring how or why she failed. In episode 2, he reacts slightly different to Balm's failure, despite the circumstances being identical to Jadeite. But because of how he reacts in the aftermath of Balm's death, it can be reasonably understood that he's suspicious of his Yoma being killed twice in a row. In episode 3, he works alongside Flau and never explains outright why. But because of his change in reaction to Morga and Balm's death, it's easy to interpret that he wanted to ensure that Flau wouldn't fall victim to the same thing that killed Morga and Balm, thus thwarting his plan. And when Sailor Moon reveals herself, he correctly deduces that she is the one that defeated his previous Yoma and dashed his plots. And when he's about to kill her but is interrupted by an unknown third party, he stops and retreats. Episode 4 shows him working alone, using hypnotic equipment to secure minions that double as meat shields so he can secure the energy and get it back to D point without issue. Again, it is never stated why he doesn't bring a Yoma along for this plot, nor why he felt the need to use technology to create mind slaves. But using the previous reactions Jadeite has shown to specific opposition or roadblocks, it can be reasonably assumed that he's doing all this to avoid involving the third party to stop him from securing all the energy. All of this is logical and consistent with Jadeite's intelligence and priorities, but is never stated outright. This is the epitome of subtlety. Naru's reaction to Umino's out-of-character behavior in episode 2 supports her later affection for Nephrite. She views several of Umino's reprehensible actions in that episode, including flipping up Haruna Sensei's skirt, throwing rocks at teachers through a window, being sexually aggressive and attempting to sexually assault Usagi, and pushing Usagi to go on a date with him as brave instead of obnoxious. She lists all these things in a positive light, as opposed to deriding him and chastising him for doing these bad things. Usagi reacts accordingly to Umino's actions, but Naru appears impressed. which hints at the fact that she likes bad boys, just before the arc where she falls for the baddest boy at that point in the story. Yumeno's potential supernatural power is handled very subtly. First, we're shown several rainbow crystal holders displaying supernatural powers unique to their lives. Crane Game Joe has limited telekinesis, thus making him able to easily win at crane games. Urawa has clairvoyance. After Yumemi's episode, we're shown that Grandpa Hino has supernatural powers similar to Rei's and even similar to Zoisite himself. That on top of his physical abilities outclassing all other men of his age, bordering on supernatural agility, speed, durability, and jumping. Finally, we're shown Retto Butler has abilities similar to Tuxedo Kamen, who has a sixth sense specific to Sailor Moon. Retto Butler also appears to have a sixth sense specific to Luna, as no matter where she is in episode 31, he knows she's in danger and runs to her rescue. And again, his agility, speed, durability, and jumping capacity are far greater than a normal cat with his physique should have. So we have proof that rainbow crystal holders tend to have supernatural abilities, although Reika and the priest appears to be the exception to the rule. However, we are told that many people believed that owning one of her illustrations could make their romantic dreams come true. Now, it's not necessarily a fact that this happens to people who own her art, but we have a clear precedent of relatively low-level supernatural powers displayed by the vast majority of the rainbow crystal holders. And we have this rumor specific to Yumemi's artwork, so one can reasonably conclude that this rumor is in fact a supernatural ability that Yumemi has due to being a rainbow crystal holder. It can also be concluded that just like Reika and the priest, she does not possess supernatural powers, and this is just a baseless rumor. But the fact that it isn't definitive and is open to interpretation on the viewer's part makes it very subtle. That's just season 1, and it's not even a comprehensive list. I skipped over so many things. Nothing subtle and classic. I guess you just weren't paying attention then. That, or you've begun overdosing on that gas canister of copium connected to your face. I mean, I don't know what else can be said here other than you're f***ing wrong, buddy. Either you're so unobservant you couldn't pick up on these details while watching the show due to underestimating it or something, or you haven't watched the show in a long time, forgot this subtle stuff, and are talking out of your ass because you want to defend Crystal, but critically, you're at a loss as to how. Or the third option, which just so happens to be my favorite, you don't actually know what the word subtle means and are therefore disagreeing with my assessment because you're confused but don't want to let my praise of classic go unchallenged. Either way, you are so unbelievably wrong, it's hysterical. But thanks for the laughs, Chuckles.
Only arc the 90s does better than Crystal is the Black Moon arc.
Well, it does every arc better, but at least you can admit Crystal Season 2 is dog shit. So, I'll give you half a point for this one. It's a half point because you didn't give any details as to why R is better than Crystal Season 2. You seem to be lacking any evidence or proof to back up a single thing you're saying. That's not great when you're actively disagreeing with someone who does have evidence, proof, and rock-solid arguments, but it's fine. You may continue sifting terra firma until the adequate distance from ground level is achieved. Then you may take a well-deserved, highly anticipated rest.
My biggest issue with 90s is the fillers. 90s character tropes, dumb villains, making Mamoru useless, and the anime is structured like a Monster of the Week Super Sentai show.
Okay.
That doesn't mean any of these things are bad, let alone makes Classic worse than Crystal. Again, you're stating things without backing them up. How is the filler bad? How are the 90s character tropes bad? Matter of fact, what does that even mean? 90s character tropes, what the heck does that even mean? I have no idea what you could be referring to when saying this, and how it doesn't apply to the manga, which was also made in the 90s. Like, what do you think you're doing with this particular point? What makes the villains dumb? Which villains are dumb? Do you consider any of Crystal's villains dumb? Why or why not? How is Mamoru useless in Classic and not in Crystal? What's the difference between the two? And what is the problem with the Monster of the Week formula exactly? Do you see how none of these questions have answers in this comment? You just state these things as fact and plow ahead without explaining yourself. This isn't how you argue against someone else, which, let's be clear, that's what he's trying and failing to do. You're just throwing things at me because you apparently feel some type of way. The actual discussion hasn't progressed forward with any of this. But alas, the burden of communication falls upon the more intelligent party, so allow me to take the reins for a second. I cover the necessity of filler in my Why You Should Watch vid, and I detail the improvements that filler made to the original story in my 3 Classic vs. Crystal vids. So if you're claiming filler is an objective issue with Classic, you're very, very, very wrong. Go watch those videos to see specifically how wrong you are. And this time, pay attention, Slappy. Thank you, next. I don't even know what 90s character tropes are, but since the manga was made at the same time as the anime, I'm gonna go ahead and point out that there will inevitably be some overlap with 90s character tropes, meaning Crystal, that more or less faithfully adapts the manga, has the same 90s character tropes as the manga, which makes this point feckless. Shocker. Moving on. The villains aren't all dumb, and in fact the villains are more intelligent in Classic than Crystal. Morga and Jadeite are way more intelligent, as I've explained in the Classic vs. Crystal vids. Nihilania is insanely more intelligent. I proved that in the Eternal Movie Rant video. The only villains that are arguably dumber than Crystal are the Daimons, the Rimless, the Phages, and the Sailor Animates. Everybody else is pretty smart compared to Crystal, which has laughably moronic antagonists because the story is laughably moronic. So if you're claiming dumb villains are an objective issue with Classic, you are quite firmly wrong. Mamoru is anything but useless in Classic. I prove this in my videos. Conversely, Crystal Mamoru is definitely useless. I showed him being useless in episode 1. He quite literally does nothing of importance at all in the entire episode. So again, you are blatantly wrong here. The Monster of the Week formula in and of itself is not bad. Just because you recognize tropes and cliches that have been done poorly before does not mean that recognizing said trope in something else means the product is poorly made. Execution is everything. I'm gonna keep saying it until it sinks in. It's how and why the trope or cliche is being used, not the mere fact that the trope or cliche exists. Please stop doing this. It's really not how media analysis is supposed to work. Okay, Pumpkin?
Between the two is the perfect Sailor Moon season.
I'm gonna assume you mean show, and I disagree. I feel that going between Crystal and Classic is a mistake, seeing as Classic is 99% right and Crystal is 99% wrong. I think that between PGSM and Classic is the perfect Sailor Moon show. But hey, this is your opinion, I'll let you have it. I disagree with it though.
Also, Crystal really pissed you off that much? Did someone is Toei screw you over? Does Naoko owe you money or something?
You know, as a matter of fact, she does. I've been trying to get in touch with her for years, but she's been screening my calls. So if you could get a message to her from me, I'd really appreciate it. And it's crazy how you know this, but Toei did actually screw me over. They made Crystal. All jokes aside, is there a problem with me being upset about this stuff? Are you trying to police how I feel about a piece of art right now? So we're gatekeeping feelings now too. That's neat. And make no mistake, that's what he's doing with this last bit. He's going, "You mad, bruh?" in an attempt to invalidate what I've said, as if it's all the rantings and ravings of an unhinged emotional wreck, when even if I was unhinged and emotional, that doesn't negate anything I've said. My points still stand, my arguments are still sound, the evidence is still on my side. And he has yet to counter a single point of mine effectively, by the way. So this is not an argument. This is a fallacy. It doesn't factor in the actual points being made or the subject matter. It's simply pointing at the opposition and going, "Look at how triggered he is, lol." That doesn't do anything. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a quick jab at my character, which, fine. People have been doing that left and right. You're welcome to join in on the fun. The problem is you can't use personal insults or jabs at a person's character in place of counter arguments in a debate. Those are non sequiturs, smoke screens, irrelevant asides. They don't mean anything to the actual debate. It doesn't progress the conversation anywhere. It actively causes the discussion to stagnate. This is like if you angrily explain 2 + 2 = 4 and then someone went, "You mad, bruh?" in an effort to invalidate what you've said. What's the logic here? Because I'm mad, that suddenly means 2 + 2 is no longer 4? Because the concept of mathematics and logic itself is dependent upon the emotional state of the individuals involved? Is there some sort of reality-bending quality to my mood that suddenly makes 2 + 2 = 5 because I'm mad now? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? What do you think this accomplished? No, I'm seriously asking, what does pointing out my emotional state do for Crystal's objective quality? How does that change a single point I bring up? If I drink some calming tea and restate all of my arguments in the most milquetoast zen way possible, does that suddenly make me correct on all fronts in your eyes? This is abject nonsense, and I'm tired of people with alleged cognitive function presenting it as anything other than abject nonsense. I've said this before, but no one has the right to police how anyone feels in response to media, positive or negative. Feel whatever you want, however deeply you want, about whatever you want, including my videos. If my work pisses anyone off, I'm fine with that. If Sailor Moon Crystal feels anyone with joy unspeakable, I'm also fine with that. I don't get it personally, but whatever. Feelings don't have to make perfect sense when it comes to art. So by that same token, let people feel whatever they want when they make arguments or critiques of art. Either all feelings are valid across the board or none of them are. You can't pick and choose when someone is allowed to feel whatever emotion in terms of art. Granted, you shouldn't use your feelings as objective evidence of anything or in the place of a credible argument, but if we're strictly talking about an emotional response to art, how can anybody be wrong for how they feel about the art? I'd love to see somebody try and argue that your emotional response to a piece of art is objectively wrong. That sounds like a fucking impossible task, but I'd be fascinated by this intellectual titan giving it the good old college try regardless. Yet, what makes this particular statement so intriguing, what elevates this comment from mind-numbing stupidity to hilarious comedy gold, is this "you mad, bruh?" energy is coming from the same person who did this.
You mad, bro? Are you mad, bro? You mad, bro? Are you mad, bro?
Dude, you're seriously shading the crystal brooch when almost every other item Moon and Chibi Moon use in the series are changed to look like toys?
Yes.
You mad, bro? Are you mad, bro?
Somebody's mad.
Again, I don't care if he's pissed off at my videos or not. Feel whatever you want in response to the art you consume. But, hypocrisy, thy name is apparently Crimsonite 2044 this evening. I should also add that this is the very first "you mad, bruh?" comment I've received for Sailor Moon content, so it's doubly funny that the first instance of this is from someone who can only be described as definitely mad, bruh. Ladies and gentlemen, the self-awareness has plummeted off the charts with this one. Congratulations to hypocrisy. I mean Crimsonite 2044. And I think we have time for just one more comment before I close out, and it's another milestone, at least for me personally. So here we go.
Actually, no men should watch Sailor Moon. It only empowers girls. Boys shouldn't involved in this junk.
Yes, you heard and or read that correctly. No, I do not believe this is a troll. And yes, there are no replies to this blessedly ignorant comment. So, dear viewers, I leave you with the idea that there are still people out there that believe that target audience equals only demographic allowed to consume product. And instead of giving my response, because it's just too damn easy, I'm gonna let you guys give your own response to this intellectual titan, and perhaps on the next comment showcase, because there is gonna be another one, we'll see what you guys had to say to this brilliant forward thinker. So, that'll do it for now. Thank you everybody for helping me reach 1,000+ and for sending in all these wonderful, wonderful comments. Keep them coming because I read all of them. If I didn't feature yours in this video, don't worry, I've got a huge backlog. I didn't want to make a super long video this time, so I just drew the line arbitrarily. I'll try to get to every single comment, and the ones that I find either interesting, hilarious, or in need of countering, I'll feature it next time. And I guess I'll see everybody for the next Sailor Moon vid, where we tackle episode 2 of Classic. Thank you so very much once again. Your big brother Saj loves you all. Yes, even you. And I'll see you next video. Ciao.
Ten times more gorgeous than the anime.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?